All right, we are back. I don't know what's getting you through your days, but I hope Late Night in the Midlands is getting you through your nights. And Columbia, you've been without us for a while, and I bet it's really good to have us back. I mean, look what you've had to contend with, right? So now you're about to get not only the truth, but the expansion of the mind. Oh, and I mean big time. You've got a moon that's been sitting above you for ever and a day, right? Ever since you can remember. Well, we're going to tell you a little something about that moon. Well, my guest is going to tell you a little something about that moon tonight that, I don't know, it'll either get you thinking, or you'll say, oh, nonsense, and turn it right off. Or you'll say, well, finally, somebody's saying it like it is. I don't know. You'll have to decide. I've got a really good guest joining me, and he'll be with us in just a few moments. If you want to call in tonight, if this is assuming our phones work. Now, we've got a few days yet before I had ordered a wire, which is going to solve our phone problem. And that wire's on its way. Unfortunately, it's taken a few days. So we should be all set next week with that for sure. And once we are, that'll be really, really nice. But the fact is tonight we'll go by chance. It might work. It might not work. We don't know. We'll see what happens when we take calls. And, of course, that's not until after the next break. Then we'll take calls. So you got a little while anyways. But when you do, it's 803-392-4566. Or you could get us on Skype ID LNM Radio. All right. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about my guest. Rob Shelsky is an avid and eclectic writer of both fiction and nonfiction and averages about 4,000 words a day. Rob, with a degree in science, has written a large number of factual articles for the former Alien Skin magazine, as well as for other magazines such as Doorways, Midnight Street UK, Internet Review of Science Fiction, and many others. And while at Alien Skin magazine, a resident columnist there for 7 years, Rob did a number of investigative articles, including some concerning the paranormal, as well as columns about UFOs, including interviews of those who have had encounters with them. He has often and over a long period explored the alien and UFO question and has made investigative trips to research such UFO hotspot areas such as Pine Bush, New York, Gulf Breeze, Florida, and other such regions, including Brown Mountain, North Carolina, known for the infamous Brown Mountain Lights, as well as investigating numerous places known for paranormal activity. And with all that, you probably know him really well now, right? That was a lot. And the website is www.robshelsky.blogspot.com. And you're in luck if you couldn't write that down. All you got to do is go to latenightinthemidlands.com and click the link right there in the picture slider or on our schedule page. Again, that's latenightinthemidlands.com. And if you're on a computer, you could go over to our chat room at latenightinthemidlands.com. Just click the chat and listen tab at the top of the website. It'll bring you over to our chat and listen page. You sign up. It only takes a minute. It really does. It only takes a minute. It's quick, really quick. You confirm your email, bam, you're in. And then you can send private messages directly to me. Questions. I'm sorry. I should rephrase. Let me rephrase that. You may send questions for the guest by private message to me. I can't hold a conversation with you because guess what? I'm live. That's how you lose affiliates. All right. So that being said, why don't we go ahead and welcome my guest on the show. Let's see. I am first going to find him. There he is. And now here we go. We'll bring him on and let's get this party started. Let's try to get this party started. All right, there we go. No problems tonight. Let's keep things real here. All right, it's ringing, folks. It's a ringing. It's ringing. We're just waiting on an answer. In the meantime, again, the website's www.latenightinthemidlands.com, folks. Hit that donate button. That's what keeps us on the air. It really does. Keep us here. Help us out. Subscribe as well. And don't forget to like the video over on YouTube because we simulcast over there. We're all over the place now. We're getting out there more and more. So many different places. and for whatever reason, the guest has not yet answered. So let's try again. I don't know. Hey, you never know. Nature may have called. Sometimes these things happen at the most opportune time, right? So let's try again. Oh, no, he's trying to call me now. No, I can't do that because then I can't bring in callers. So, all right, let's do this again. There we go. Rob, welcome to Late Night in the Midlands. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. Sorry about the phone tag there.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, so hey, listen, I thank you so much for joining me tonight and spending some time with me on this Friday night. I'm looking forward to talking about these most very interesting topics like the moon and time travel. I mean, when I was reading your stuff, man, I was, Jesus, we need 3 more hours. Anyways, but
what stuff did you read?
Oh, I was just, bios. I was checking out some of the past shows you were on and checking out your blog and some other things. And just the topics of time travel and the possibility of people being maybe abducted and brought to other timelines. Just incredible stuff. So, but I thought first we'd start out with a little background. What got you so interested in these topics that you do tackle?
Well, my brother was missing time when he was a teenager, and that got my attention. I didn't know about it until about 20 years later, and then he told me the whole story about him and a friend out in the desert and seeing a light, deciding to follow it where they thought it might have landed in the desert, and then not remembering a thing until the next morning. And then they packed up their camp and went home and never spoke about it, not for, well, 2 decades. And then my brother suddenly remembered it, talked to his friend, and they became so intrigued by it all that my friend moved his entire family, or my brother's friend, to Las Vegas to be near where my brother was living so they could investigate the matter further. And they did this for a number of years.
Interesting. All right. And so you're also a MUFON investigator, is that right?
Field investigator,
Field
yes.
investigator. Now, how is that? How do you like that? I mean, you must get to see, or at least go check out some real interesting stuff.
Oh, it's all very interesting. Everything that you talk to, I mean, the persons you talk to, the situations that you encounter are intriguing. You do get an awful lot of people, though, reporting things, and then when you talk to them, it gets very iffy. We can discount some 95% of the cases.
And well, that's got to be really, I guess that's got to be really disappointing especially if you have to travel, go somewhere, check something out, and find. I mean, do you let the people know they're full of it, or do you, or no?
Well,
You probably can't, huh?
yeah, we get some strange cases. We get some pretty bizarre ones, but no, most people actually think they saw something and they'll send in a photo. And of course, we have to investigate everything. And the end result is that 9 times out of 10 is just a glitch in the photo or a lens flare or something like that. Or what the person saw probably was an airplane because it was near an airfield. Even if it wasn't an airplane, when it's within 4 or 5 miles of a major airfield, we have to, and under certain weather conditions, we have to just assume that it probably wasn't a real UFO.
Yeah, well, here in Columbia, because we have a new affiliate in Columbia, South Carolina, so with that, wouldn't be a bad time to bring it up. I've had, since, I come from Rochester, New York, and since I have come to Columbia, South Carolina, I've had more sightings than, one person deserves. And I'm not someone who sees a little light in the sky and says, oh, it's an alien, but I've seen some stuff that I know I've never seen before. I mean, like, almost like energy vehicles, energy crafts. I mean, they glow. The light doesn't shine down on the ground. I mean, but they're bright, and you wouldn't notice unless you looked up and seen them there. I mean, just interesting stuff. I've seen the triangle types, and no noise, no nothing. And so maybe there's human beings flying these things, but if there is, boy, that's some amazing technology they have.
Yes, it is, and it could be some of them are by human beings. We could have reversed engineered technology on some of the UFOs that they say have been recovered, and which I think have been recovered. So there's a lot of consensus now that there are 2 types of UFOs: aliens and human.
Well, yeah, and by now I would think we'd have something maybe figured out from some of the ones that have crashed, at least. So and I speculate now with the abductions too. I say, how do we know that some or maybe all these abductions are human beings and they're making you think it's aliens?
Well, yes and no. I mean,
Not
one of my
all of
books.
them, but I mean, nowadays, recently, like now they could be doing it and blaming the ETs for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there are conspiracy theorists who say that they're doing it in collusion with the whole UFO thing, that if someone gets a little too out of hand, they have to either silence them some way or other. And one of those ways is to disappear them.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
there's
And,
Sheldon's list, for instance, that has quite a list of people who supposedly committed suicide, died, or disappeared under mysterious circumstances. And a lot of these people were journalists and researchers.
Now there is I don't know the exact number statistic, but I'm sure it's very, very high. But there's a lot of people, I mean, really missing in this world, right? Who, I mean, literally missing. They've never been found. And where are these people going? I mean, how come we're not running across? I mean, that's a lot of people. You could probably fill up a lake with
Oh, you could do more than fill up a lake.
them.
In America, some of the estimates vary, but they say around 900,000 people a year disappear. If you subtract all those people who were kidnapped, murdered, who just wanted to disappear, or children who were abducted by the other parent in a dispute over child custody, if you get rid of all of those, you're still left again with that anywhere between 5 and 15%. I use the lower figure, 5%, and that comes to darn close to 50,000 people per year, depending on which original estimate you use as the number disappeared. But Australia has a huge number disappearing too. For a country as small as they are, population-wise, they average 30,000 disappearances a year. An incredible number.
Wow. And yeah, and so, I mean, where are these people going? I mean, it's not, I can't be that easy to hide thousands of people. I mean, somebody's going to turn up somewhere. I mean, I would think, right? I mean,
Well, maybe they're all at Disney World.
it might be under Disney World for all we know.
Yeah, or could be, yes, it
Yeah.
could be. I think they're being disappeared permanently. David Paulides talks about it in his missing books, or 11 missing books, and he intimates, at least from what I got out of it, is that it's something like a Bigfoot or Sasquatch that might be the culprit behind those. But my evidence would suggest that it's something more extraterrestrial or alien in nature.
Yeah, and that could be. Now, listen, I was going to save this for later and just get to the moon, but I mean, we're on this subject. People disappearing. Now, I had read where it was suggested that people could be traveling through time and like taking people to another timeline.
Well, there's a number of possible explanations. There are many who believe that UFOs are interdimensional, not specifically extraterrestrial, which means that people could be abducted to other timelines. There are others who say that people are simply falling into other timelines, and there are others who say that our timelines merge at some points, and that's another whole story in itself, but it involves the Mandela effect. But yes, it's quite possible people are disappearing to other timelines.
The Mandela effect. Now, there's another one. I mean, how much water or do you put into the whole Mandela effect? Now, we've done shows on that before, and I've had people. I got one guy. He is super religious. His Bible is his guardian angel, and he came on, and I couldn't believe he said it, but he said there was things changed in his old Bibles that like he went back and stuff was literally changed, meaning not that they made new copies or anything. He had the old copy. He knew it by heart. He said stuff was changed in it. He blamed the Mandela effect.
Well, one good example of that is the lion lying down with the lamb. You've seen pictures of that all the time. You see it over in children's nursery rooms and stuff, this picture of a lion lying with a lamb, and they're just as sweet as they can be to each other. The Bible doesn't refer to a lion lying down with a lamb. It refers to a wolf lying down with a lamb. And yet I was brought up, and I know a lot of people brought up, and you can look on the internet, just type that in, and you'll see image after image of a lion with a lamb, and yet it's not. It's a wolf with a lamb.
Interesting. Yeah. So I mean, so you think the Mandela effect could be real then?
I think it is real. I don't think all reported cases of it are real. I do think that one the one we were just talking about might be, because I swear I've always learned that it was the lion and the lamb, not the wolf and the lamb. I never even heard of a wolf and a lamb until recently. But yes, I think it's real. I don't think Berenstain Bears versus Berenstain Bears, which is a really highly touted one, is necessarily a true Mandela effect. It may just be that it is a mismemory. But there is something odd about the Mandela effect. When people get it wrong, they get it wrong in their thousands and even tens of thousands. And the really odd part is they get it wrong the same way. A good example is the color chartreuse. What color is chartreuse to you?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay. Well, a lot of people think it's a sort of a reddish brown, reddish purple, like a maroon, and it isn't. It's a lime green. And yet, when the people get it wrong, they all get it wrong the same way. They don't say it's orange or yellowish or yellow orange. They say it's a reddish brown or reddish purple. They get it exactly the opposite color from what it is. And they
Once
all
you
get it wrong the same way. That's the weird part.
once you get into colors outside the Crayola crayon box, I'm lost.
I kind of go along with that myself, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I got some things I'll tell Autumn. I'll say, oh, it's green. Oh, it's not green. It's blue. It looks green to me. But anyways, so yeah, so then we can have people traveling. I mean, so these people traveling in time, they would be, I mean, us then, right? From the future or from where?
Well, they could be, or they could be extraterrestrials. The theory by Nick Bostrom, I believe his name was, is that if there are future civilizations, some of them may have no interest at all in doing time simulations or time travel. Some there may be no future civilizations. We might all wipe ourselves out, but even if we did wipe ourselves out, there might be other races in other situations, galaxies, solar systems that do have an interest. And if they do, and they do simulations, then based on that, it's far more likely we are in the simulation than not. And yes, the other thing would be that if time travel is ever discovered, and I believe it already has been, by the way, and I cite cases like with Sid Hurwitz and his supposed time machine and some others to kind of back that up. But yeah, I think it's quite possible that time travel exists and that people are moving through time. In fact, I think it's a probability.
That'd be fascinating. So, what's the chances that I mean, that right here on our timeline, that somebody's already invented a time machine? I remember a while back somebody sent Art Bell some contraption, but he said he never tried it. But
Probably a good thing.
yeah, probably would have fried him. But so what do you think the odds are that we have something like that here in this timeline?
I think, do we have it in this time? I think there's a reasonable probability that we've come up with something. Sid Hurwitz lived in Toronto, Canada. He was incredibly good with machinery. He supposedly came up with in fact, he had two companies, and he was so sought after that during the war, the Toronto government asked that he be withdrawn from the military so that he could help them set up an electrical grid in the area. I believe it was World War One. Don't quote me on that. It might have been World War Two, but I think it was World War One. And so he did. But he supposedly invented a time machine. Thought it would help the police. He had the police come out. Was able to freeze machinery in place without it being able to move. Even a pistol on a table couldn't be picked up by the two cops together. And as they were leaving, Sid Hurwitz's wife heard one of them say, "This would have good military applications." Well, later, he received an award from the Israeli government, one of their highest awards, if not the highest. And they never said what it was for, but the rumor is that it was because his machine was used in the raid on Entebbe in Uganda to save the people that were being held there under, I want to say, Idi Amin. And and so he received this award. That's a matter of record. In my book, there's a photograph of him holding the award, and it was in the Toronto newspapers, but it never says why he was given the award. There's absolutely no mention, which is highly unusual.
Oh, yeah.
But it was for aid to the Israeli government. That's all we know.
Wow. Now, I've seen here where even entire villages in Canada and China have disappeared. Is that true? Entire villages?
Well, it depends on yes, it's true.
Wow.
The one in Canada is particularly difficult because the story was recounted so many times afterwards, and it was embellished and it grew till the point where it was like hundreds of people, when in the original story it was more like 30, 35 people. But yes, it seems a village in Canada, in the far north of Canada, the villagers just disappeared. A trapper went there, and he found food still cooking. He found dogs chained up, but starving is the way the article originally said it. And there's also gravestones that have been moved. And these people, the native tribes, don't do that. They're very profound with regard to their burial sites, and they don't even like archaeologists disturbing them. But yes, they disappeared. And there was also a village in China where the entire inhabitants disappeared. And this was broadcast on the Chinese media. They later recanted it, but not until long after the story had been given. The strange lights were seen in the sky at the time. People in 2 other towns nearby saw these lights as well. Lots of witness reports to this effect. It was broadcast on Chinese radio. Again, it's a communist radio station. They don't usually broadcast stuff unless they mean to. And the funny part of it all is people disappeared. And at that time, shortly afterwards, military convoys were seen moving into that area. Now, the village was near a nuclear power plant, but there's been no sign before, since, or after, in any way, shape, or form, that there's any kind of a nuclear accident or problem. And these people have never turned up again. They're just gone.
Wow. And nobody, well, I guess people wonder what happened to him, but there's apparently no evidence of what happened to him. No sign at all, no note in the cave. Hey, Mom, Dad, the aliens came to get me.
Apparently not. Of course, it is China. And again, it is a communist style government, and it's hard to get all the facts in these situations. And, but we do know that something happened, that it was reported on the radio, that people did see strange lights in the sky, that the military convoys did move in on the roads there. You know, by the way, they were carrying missiles, live missiles. Now, if you had a nuclear accident, you wouldn't be carrying live missiles into an area. You'd be probably carrying them out of the area. So as to why this was happening, we don't know either. But was it for some kind of defense? We can only speculate. But this goes way back. We've had individual group disappearances for centuries. This is nothing new.
And I've seen the term time travel invasion. So might that be what's going on? I mean, some secret war we don't know about?
Well, again, there's a lot of people who think there is a war going on, if not in time and space, and that we've been a part of it since the very earliest days of our history. Apparently, it's been a long, ongoing war. The Vedic texts talk about, of India, and they're quite ancient, talk about a war in the heavens and on earth, and even a battle taking place on the moon. And at one point, humans rebelling against their overlords or their masters, lawful masters, as the Vedic texts put it. And so we also have evidence of radioactivity in 2 ancient cities dating from that time, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. We have evidence of vitrified rock, which has been turned to glass. Vitrified rock is glass. And we have that not only from India, but we also have it from Scotland and Germany, from old fortresses, ruins of fortresses there. Incredible. Now, vitrified rock can only be done in a supervolcano situation, an asteroid impact, or a nuclear explosion. And there's no evidence that there was either a asteroid impact or a supervolcano in those areas. In fact, no volcanic activity at all, it seems. So that only leaves a nuclear explosion.
Yeah, and I bring this up a lot, so listeners probably know where I'm going with this. But Dr. Brandenburg, I don't know if you've ever spoke with him, but he believes that, well, he says that there's the signature on Mars that you would expect to find here on Earth if a nuke was tested or blown off.
Yes, atmospheric radioactive isotopes.
Yeah.
In fact, America dispatched a plane just, I think, about a month ago up into the Arctic, and it was a snooping atmospheric plane. And there's a lot of conjecture about why it was doing that, because its sole purpose is to detect such isotopes in the atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot going on in the Antarctic these days.
Well, that was the Arctic, but yes, You're right. The Antarctic is a really big hotbed of activity right now too, it seems.
Well, yeah, they like places we're not. You know, I don't know. Some suggest that they've got some technology they're digging up over there. I don't know. I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, it seems like some very important people have gone to the Antarctic.
Too many important people, and too close together. If these people had been stretched out over time, like say a decade or so, or even 2, you wouldn't think much of it. But it's all been in like the last year or so that this has been going on.
I see. Yeah, it's well, I guess we'll find out soon enough, right? It seems like the cat don't stay in the bag very long these days.
It doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, I think it's more like Schrodinger's cat. You never know if it's alive or dead on some of these things. But you have to consider that there's a lot of disinformation probably out there as well.
There is.
So it's hard to weed through all this and separate the wheat from chaff in this situation. But it can be done.
That's true. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about the topic at hand, and I figure we got a break coming up in about 15 minutes, something like that. After the break, we'll talk more about the moon, too, and I want to give people an opportunity. If you've got questions, you may send them via chat. You could private message me on latenightinthe-midlands.com, or you can give the questions to our moderators in the YouTube chat, and they will get those to us. And then after the break, we'll try to take calls. We'll see how it works. We've been having problems with our phone line with Skype, and so we've got new lines going in, landlines finally next week, so we should be in much better shape. So the Mandela effect. What type of, I mean, like what other types of evidence? What have you seen? I mean, outside of Bible, I mean, what else has happened? I know Mandela was supposed to have died twice. I think that's where all this grew from, right?
Originally, yes.
Yeah.
And I remember it both ways. I remember him dying in prison in the 80s, and I remember him dying after he retired from being president of South Africa. So, and that's not uncommon for people to have double the memories. But it isn't just Mandela, it's all sorts of things. I did mention the Berenstain versus Berenstain Bears,
Yeah.
which seems to be the darling of the Mandela effect crowd right now. But there's so much more. Everything from Star Wars, where C-3PO had a silver leg and supposedly always had it, and yet everyone remembers him with a gold leg. And it's amazing because you just don't see movies with him having a silver leg in it. But apparently, I have a blooper which shows he's completely gold, no silver leg. So,
Yeah, well, that's what I always thought he was. Now look, I had the action figures when I was a kid. I played with them, so I know he was all gold.
well, there you go. And Luke Skywalker, when he was told, what were the words that Darth Vader said to him when he told him he was related to Luke Skywalker? Do you
I
remember?
remember it as Luke, I am your father. That's how I remember it. But I understand now it's I am your father.
Uh, he does not say, I am your father at all. If you watch the movie now, he doesn't say, Luke, I am your father, or I am your father in that way at all. It's completely different. The scene from what everyone, including James Earl Jones,
Really?
who in several interviews he says, "Luke, I am your father," is the way he said it. And this isn't with regard to Mandela effect. This is just interviews he did and happened to mention that in it.
and so what do you know? What does he say now? I
I'm
could
trying
look
to
it
remember
up
because I read so
probably.
many different versions of it. To be
All right,
honest with
everyone in the chat, what's he say? I know they'll know.
you, yeah, they'll know. They'll pick it up. But the evidence that's convinced me more than anything is actual visual evidence. There are two Ford medallions from the World's Fair. I believe it's the 1964 one. It might have been an older one. I'm not sure. But again, all this stuff blurs when you read so much about it, research so much of it. But one has the curly Q on the F for Ford, and one doesn't. And according to Ford, it was always the same way with the curly Q. And yet there's a man who has both medallions, and one has it with the curly Q on the F, and one doesn't. Actual photographs of the medallions, untouched. And Ford's at a loss because they said, as far as they know, they only ever had the one version with the curly Q on the F. There are two movies. Well, one movie and one TV show. The movie Dazed and Confused, 1993, I think it was, shows two students in a classroom aimlessly spinning a globe. And on the globe, it shows an island to the southwest of Australia, a large one, about 1/5 the size of Australia. Now, a lot of people remember there being an island there. There isn't, by the way. And they remember, but they don't remember the name of it or anything about it. And it is clearly there on the globe, and it is not a legend or an icon. Quite often, they will put a legend or key on a globe, and they usually position it somewhere in the Indian Ocean. This is not that. I looked at it in high resolution freeze frame, and it is definitely an island. It has an inlet, a harbor, and even has place names. In the series Friends on TV, the sitcom, in the episode about going to the prom, now it was the second season, and about buddy bracelets, there is a globe in the background, and it shows an island just to the southwest of Australia, smaller and a little more directly underneath Australia, but it's definitely there. And it's not a key or a logo or a legend. And the odd part is both of these globes also show Tasmania and New Zealand. So it's not meant to be Tasmania or New Zealand, and nor is it the correct position for those. It's way off to the southwest, whereas those are under the southeast and to the east of Australia. So yeah, and both of these take place in the 1990s, which is odd.
Well, a lot of strange stuff then. Now they say they just found a new continent. I don't know if you've read about that. I imagine it's submerged, but I wonder if that's Atlantis or.
Yeah, that's supposedly Zealandia. I think it was the name they gave it, or something like that. And I just read about it. And basically it makes New Zealand kind of the high points on that submerged continent. But it's not the only one. There's also one in the Indian Ocean over in the direction south of India that is submerged, but it's considered to be a continent too. But probably not Atlantis. My bet is Atlantis was in the Atlantic somewhere, and possibly could have been the island High Brazil.
Interesting. All right. Robin is listening from YouTube, I believe, and asks, please ask the guest if he is aware of NASA's Sun Simulator. Many videos out showing something in our skies.
The sun simulator, I'm not sure what they're referring to. I do know that they are observing the sun up close and that we have seen strange objects around the sun, including something that looked like it was sucking up part of the sun into it in form of
Yeah.
energy. So, more recently, another large ship was supposedly seen there. And when you look at the photographs, it doesn't look natural, whatever these things are. So my suspicion is there is something going on around our sun. But as for a sun simulator, I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. The sun's supposed to be so hot, How does anything? I mean, I couldn't imagine any craft we have here on Earth getting close to the sun and being okay, but it looks like something is.
Well, maybe they go at night.
Yeah.
Um, if you have the kind of technology that these extraterrestrials seem to have, including bending the laws of physics, I shouldn't think getting close to the sun would be a real problem.
Now, somebody just told me that sun simulator is flat Earth stuff. If that's what they're referring to, there's no such thing, I don't believe, of no flat Earth, but to each their own. Um,
How do you feel about the hollow Earth?
Hollow Earth? I guess anything's possible. I mean, how hollow? There's got to be something. Well, I can't say there's got to be because what do I know? But
Well, actually, it would have to be. You can't have the mass of the Earth being what it is unless there's something below the surface in the way of mass to give it that density. So
right.
if the Earth were hollow, it can't be entirely hollow, no.
I see. And yeah, so, and I just asked Courtney Brown about that very thing, and he said he doesn't believe that he says if it was hollow, then it would pop like a bubble. And so that's basically, that's assuming that, like you said, if it has a lot of mass. I don't know. I guess it's possible, right?
Well, again, anything's possible, but I prefer to deal in probabilities rather than possibilities.
I see. So I mean, what do you think?
No, I don't think the Earth is hollow. I think there may be hollow caverns. There may be.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think the Earth is hollow per se.
Yeah, that's what I say. I think there'd be a lot of caverns and maybe some hollow spots, but I don't think you're going to, as far as a hollow Earth, that's kind of how I picture when people say that, is like a balloon, like you dig so far down and it's, I don't know. It just couldn't be, I don't think. But
Well, we know it gets hotter and hotter the further you dig, so it eventually reaches temperatures that are incredible. So, and that's when you start getting magma and, liquid rock. So, yeah, if it's caverns, it's got to be below the surface, but not too far below the surface.
Uh-huh. Okay. And so what's your thoughts about maybe, okay, in these caverns that might exist or might not exist, and I'm sure a lot do. What's the thoughts of maybe some other life form, ETs, call them what you want, maybe living within the Earth and we don't even know it? Maybe that's some of the craft we see. Maybe they only come out at night.
Well, increasingly, and that night keeps coming up, doesn't it? We increasingly, we're living below the Earth. More and more of our cities are going further and further down. If you go below New York, there's layer upon layer of underground structures there. The same with London. I mean, we're doing this all the time ourselves, so it's not hard to believe that UFOs might have underground bases and/or underwater bases. In fact, there seems to be a lot of evidence for that fact, at least with regard to water.
Uh-huh. Okay. And I know we're going to talk about the moon after the break, but the possibilities are endless if you just open your mind. So let's go ahead and do that. And all right, so we are back, Rob. And so let's talk a little bit about the moon. What is it? I mean, is it always been? Or no? I mean, there's ancient civilizations that I think spoke about a time when the moon didn't exist, correct? So I mean, is that something we could prove or not prove? I mean, what is that moon?
It's green cheese. Well, the moon's an oddity. Oh, just one quick thing about Darth Vader. He said, "No, I am your father." That's what he said.
Oh, that's not how I remember it.
That's not how anyone remembers it.
Damn it.
But with regard to the moon presents a lot of problems. It doesn't have enough mass for its size. It's too light. It's not dense enough, apparently. And several major scientists have said this leads to the idea that it could very well be hollow. This is not me. We're talking mainstream scientists here now. The moon has a thicker crust on the far side than it does on the near side. It has the Maria, those vast, flat, dark areas of supposed lava flows that only show up on the near side and not the far side. some scientists just recently said, well, this is probably due to the fact that the moon had one face towards the Earth. The Earth was really hot when the moon first formed, and so the heat radiating from the Earth caused lava flows on the facing side of the moon. That doesn't ring true. When the moon was first formed, it spun like a top. It had a lot of rotational. It only slowly lost that and became tidally locked with the Earth, with one face always facing towards it. So none of these theories about the moon seem to really hold true. We have evidence of certain minerals on the moon that just shouldn't be there. Titanium is one of them. We've only recently, historically speaking, been able to make titanium. It takes extremely high temperatures to refine it. That's the reason you don't find it in nature in the Earth's crust, but we find it in the moon's crust. There's a lot of helium-3 on the moon. There isn't on Earth. There's neptunium on the moon, which has a half-life of, I believe it's 2.5 million years, so it should all be long gone by now, and it is on Earth. We have to make it artificially, yet there's neptunium on the moon. We can't account for any of this.
That's yeah, and and it's amazing what that moon really means to us. It's like, oh darn, in order to get the Earth just right, well, let's put this here, and that'll keep it from, that'll keep it on its tilt. It's just, it means so much to this planet. I mean, doesn't it? The survival of this planet.
Well, there are scientists who say life on Earth wouldn't exist without the moon in the first place. So. Yes, there's evidence to suppose the moon was always here, and yet there's also evidence to suggest that it wasn't always here as well. We're talking about the ancient civilizations. The Mayans, for example, revered Venus, and they never talked about the moon practically at all. It was Venus this, Venus that. Why? When the moon is a much bigger and brighter object in the night sky. Many South American tribes, Native American tribes, preface their stories with a time before there was a moon. In Europe, you have Greece and Rome referring to a time when there was no moon. Aristarchus talks about a time when Greece was inhabited by the proselytes, which literally means the people before the moon. And this goes on and on throughout history. And yet we don't have the same sort of thing about Mars or Jupiter or even Venus for that matter. It's always, whenever you hear stories like this, it's about the moon.
We should know the ins and outs of our moon. I mean, it's so darn close. With all the, it's just amazing how we do all these things and we just never mind the moon. It's right there. We should be traveling around the whole thing. I don't know. Gas up your Jeeps, boys. It's time to take a ride. Right? I mean.
Well, we did have a strong interest in the moon, and it ended quite abruptly, and nobody's been back to the moon since. Oh, we've orbited a few satellites. China had a rover on there, which stopped working very, very quickly. So the question has to be asked, with the moon only about 250,000 miles away on average, why aren't we going to the moon? Why all this talk about Mars, but no real talk about going back to the moon, especially since we found evidence of water on the moon?
Yeah, and why wouldn't we want to set something up on the moon, and then by the time, they're ready to go to Mars, they might have something really nice set up. They could go right from the moon.
Exactly. You have a much lighter gravity well from which to launch a spaceship. I mean, Earth has a very deep gravity well. The moon's is much smaller and lighter. So it would make sense to have a base on the moon from which to start launching vehicles to the other planets.
I agree. Now, some people don't believe we could do any of that. They say that there's no way that anyone's getting past the radiation belt. What do you think? I think that with all the technology, I think ET's getting through it. So someone,
Well, I guess they're talking about the Van Allen belt. And yes, I've heard talk like that before. And no, we've constantly gotten stuff through. You have to remember when we landed people on the moon, and people, of course, say that we never really did that either, but they were ham radio operators at the time. They were very common. We didn't have cell phones back then. The only way you could talk to someone in another country without paying enormous phone fees was to be a ham radio operator. So they were able to triangulate the ham radio broadcasts from that they received from the moon. And there's no doubt that broadcasts were coming directly from the surface of the moon. The Apollo missions, we have that as evidence. We also have the evidence of the stuff they left behind there. There's a reflective mirror. We bounced a laser off. We determined the distance of the moon that way. So how did that get there if someone didn't put it there? And if not us, at least a robot ship would have had to do it. So yeah, we're going through the radiation belt.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, people act like we can't go in space and they say, well, what about, when we did go to the moon? They didn't know about the radiation threat. So how come the guys didn't die of cancer? It's like, how do you know what they knew? I don't know.
Well, yes, they knew about the Van Allen belt a long time ago. In fact, there wasn't even a movie. I think it was directed or produced by Irwin Allen. It was Fire in the Sky or something similar. And I know that's the one about Travis Walton.
Yeah.
There was another one earlier in the early 60s or late 50s that had the Van Allen belt catching fire. So we know the radiation belt existed a long, long time ago. And also we know that there's radiation in space because we're bombarded with cosmic rays. We know they can be deadly. We sent weather balloons and things to the upper atmosphere long before we launched the Apollo missions.
And well, I believe that we can also, if we're smart enough, and I think that somebody's got to be, we could probably use a lot of that to power the crafts to get around in space.
Well, we've come up with the ion drive recently, which is quite incredible. That was only on Star Trek at one time, the original Star Trek series. Do you remember Spock saying the ship's propelled by ion drive, an advanced technology, and now NASA has ion drive.
Isn't that something? I mean,
Amazing.
Yeah, you see a lot of this stuff on TV that, through the years, and it's come to a reality. I mean, my dad said, he remembers being a kid, and they used to dream about going to the moon. It was just a fantasy, and then all of a sudden, bam, they did it. And it's just amazing. All these things are ideas first, and then they become a reality, no doubt. So
ideas do become reality. Thoughts are things, right?
Yeah, and so Mandela effect. Somebody said, well, I don't know if that has anything to do with the moon, but okay. So what would you say if the moon was some hollow instrument that was towed there? What would be some of the strongest, I guess, scientific evidence? Some people talk about it ringing like a bell.
Yes, it does ring like a bell, and we can't account for that either. When the Apollo landing dropped back, the lander, the moon rang for hours, and as scientists put it, just like a bell. It was amazing. No one thought it would do that, and it does this all the time. When you strike it with a satellite, it'll ring like crazy. Now, anything will vibrate if struck, but for something to do it for that long a time implies a hollow interior. Plus, we have a seismograph on the moon to record any kind of lunar quakes. And we have found that the quakes and these impacts don't go through the center of the moon. They seem to go around the center of the moon. Now, if there's anything solid at the center, or even liquid, it should create vibrations through that medium. And you should get some kind of reaction that helps tell us what the center of the moon is made of. We don't. It's as if these vibrations have to go around, as if there was nothing there.
Interesting. So now, if it is hollow and it is brought there, then somebody says, what would an intelligent civilization do with something like that? Well, why not use it to watch us, right? I don't know. What would they do with something like that? I mean, how would it benefit them?
Well, there's two possibilities. One, the moon was there and they just hollowed it out. So the moon was always there. Another one is they found the moon and moved it there and hollowed it out in the process. There is some good evidence to support that idea, because none of our theories of the origin of the moon account for its current orbit around the Earth being so circular at its precise distance. None of the theories seem to make this a plausible scenario. Even the impact theory doesn't do it well, and therefore another theory came out, the nuclear fission theory, that tried to get around that one, and it doesn't ring true either. There's a number of reasons. If the moon came from out there somewhere, Carl Sagan was saying it'd be easier to capture an asteroid, put it in orbit around the Earth, and hollow it out to make a space station. It would be much cheaper than to try to build one from scratch of any large size, not like the one we have now, which is not that large by anywhere near by comparison. Also, an asteroid, if it were mined, one of the metallic ones, would give some $9 trillion in income off of it, and that's roughly equivalent to the GDP of the entire world for 1 year. So this is so if we can do it, and if we're talking about doing it now, why wouldn't an advanced race be able to do it with a moon, a moonlet, or an asteroid, set sail on the cosmic sea, and occasionally just drift into a solar system to sort of refuel and warm by the fire of the local sun?
I do worry about something like that, though, because one mistake and we've got an asteroid coming for Earth.
Well, yes, but as our technology improves, you wouldn't do it all at once. You would bump it gently until it went into it. We have asteroids in orbit around us now. There's one about the size of a basketball, and there's another one at a Lagrange point. So they're captured naturally without striking the Earth. And yes, we could do it. It would take effort, it would take money, it would take time, but yeah, we could do it.
Oh, okay. Well, I would hate to see them think they know what they're doing. All of a sudden, here it comes. That would be a hard. Who knows? Maybe that's what happened last time.
You never know. The dinosaurs might have done it, right?
Yeah, I hope they learned from their mistakes. That's how they became the reptilians. Maybe you never know.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah. Now I've seen where you had characterized. I think it was Coast to Coast you were on, and you could kind of call. I think if I remember correctly, it was you who called the moon a Death Star, possibly. And I wonder, I liked hearing that because I've always looked at Nibiru. I'm sure you've heard a lot about Nibiru. I've always thought Nibiru could be something like that, a Death Star, something that they were traveling in. And primitive people would look up and think, hey, it's a planet, right? So I'm wondering, could the moon had been the original, Nibiru, maybe?
I'm not sure if it's the original Nibiru because the Anunnaki and the Sitchin's translations of them state that it was out near the edge of our solar system and had an atmosphere, and they required gold because there was a problem with the atmosphere there. So that would contradict that. But as a Death Star, sure. Any military at all will tell you that they always want to occupy the high ground. And the moon is the high ground for Earth.
Yeah.
Anyone on the moon the moon's face doesn't revolve. The Earth revolves beneath the moon, but the moon always has one face facing towards the Earth. So any bases on our side of the moon, and supposedly there's some on the far side too, would be able to observe the Earth nonstop all the time.
Yeah, all Earth all the time, right? It'd be like their favorite TV station.
And we do have some evidence something weird is going on our side of the moon. Aristarchus crater, scientists have nicknamed the blue gem. And the reason they call it that is so often there have been blue glows, flashes, streaks, beacons, mists, ground fogs around Aristarchus. Now, some scientists just in the last week said, well, this might be due to volcanic activity. But the moon is supposedly dead, and we have seen no sign of volcanic activity anywhere else on the moon. Plus, when someone did a spectrum analysis of the blue glow in Aristarchus at one point, they found it exactly matched that of a fusion power reactor's spectrum.
Wow. Wow.
Well, yeah, that's weird, right?
That is weird. Well, listen, I strongly believe that there's a lot going on the moon that we don't know about, such as bases. I mean, I don't know. ETs, probably humans too, up there. I'm sure there's a whole lot going on. I go out at night after the show and on a clear night, and I'll just stare at that moon. And boy, sometimes I swear I see stuff.
NASA commissioned its own report before it sent the Apollo astronauts to the moon. And it was over 500 years, and they included observations by leading scientists of the time. And the reason it's 500 years old is that's roughly when the telescope came into use. There were observations of the moon before that as well, but they wanted more reliable ones. And we have been seeing things, they call it transient lunar phenomena. We have been seeing things on the moon like lightning, glows, beacons, streaks, flashes, pulses, you name it, we've seen it.
But the moon's not supposed to have any kind of an atmosphere, isn't that right?
No, it doesn't. So how would it have lightning? There'd be nothing for it.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but they say it's so thin of an atmosphere, right? It's supposed to be super thin, and
it's virtually a vacuum. It's the next best thing to a vacuum. You would have a hard time creating that good a vacuum, for lab purposes here on Earth. We have the equipment now, but it's very expensive to get that kind of a vacuum.
But wouldn't you need the clouds and stuff for lightning? I mean,
you need an atmosphere because it's a discharge, and you need a positive and a negative charge buildup for them to want to discharge. So. You would need an atmosphere. Plus, you wouldn't get mists and fogs if there's no atmosphere.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Now, if there was an atmosphere, like say we're being lied to, and there is some kind of like storm systems or whatever that move around on the moon, just, the average people looking up at the moon at night, would we notice that? Would we be able to see it? Or would we really have to, even with telescopes, you would think people would say, oh, look at that, look at a tornado over here on the moon, or, they'd see it.
Right. No, there's no atmosphere on the moon. It's so rarefied as to be unbelievable. Yeah, you'd be sucking vacuum if you tried to breathe on the moon. But we do see mists and fogs around the Aristarchus crater, and we can't account for that. Or something that's blotting out visual features at times. But nowhere else on the moon particularly do we see that.
That's interesting. So then how does the lightning happen? Is it just some kind of freak thing in the craters? Or?
Well, you either have to believe they did not see what they thought they saw, or they did and something else is accounting for it, like some kind of an energy discharge could account for it.
That could be. Now the flat earthers would say it's a glitch in the hologram.
Well, something, that could be true too. If we're a simulation, then all bets are off, right?
Yeah, exactly. I just hope that the kid keeps his computer on wherever it is.
Well, we're running at super fast time, we're operating at the speed of light, so even if you shut it off, it probably would be a number of lifetimes before we would notice the shutdown. Because we'd be living at a much super speed than they would be outside the simulation.
So, but if the moon, if when it first came to be, or even when it was spinning like it, wouldn't it have caused like tidal waves and things. I mean, couldn't it have caused like mass flooding and explain some of what people were seeing, or no?
Well, in my book, I talk about that specifically. We have evidence that something incredible happened around 12,000 years ago, 10,000 BC. We have the stories of the Great Flood in almost every culture around the planet. Now, if the moon was moving into orbit around the Earth, or if the orbit of the moon had been changed to establish a new orbit, we would have had tidal effects, including massive flooding, coastal flooding, that sort of thing, which could account for the Great Flood. And we know for a fact that a lot of the ancient megalithic cities and structures are underwater. Also, we have evidence of something else that looks like it might have been a war. We had a crown fire in North America. Also in North America at that time, we had the extinction of, right at that time, the extinction of all the major giant mammals, the woolly mammoth, the mastodon, the saber-toothed cats, all those, the giant sloth. They all went bye-bye right about that time. We also have the evidence of all the anecdotal evidence of all the cultures talking about a time before there was a moon. And you start to add all that together, and you come up with the idea that something really momentous happened around 12,000 years ago. And I think it might have been either the arrival of the moon or the moon being repositioned in our sky.
Yeah, I mean, it had to be something. So, I mean, and who knows? They talk about, fire and brimstone and all this stuff from the sky. It could have been, maybe it happened. Maybe they seen it, and maybe that's what it was. The moon. I mean, you might get up in the moon, and I don't know, you find a trap door, and next thing you know, some stairs leading down into it, and a captain's chair, and everything. I mean, can you imagine, though? I mean, oh my God.
Shades of First Men in the Moon, Jules Verne, huh?
They're just hoping there's no gas left in there and no one turns the key,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's there does seem to be evidence. For instance, if Aristarchus does have some kind of a hidden fusion reactor within the crater, it would account for why it would be there is all that helium-3, which there is so much of on the moon. And helium-3 is a perfect fuel for nuclear fusion, not fission, but fusion.
Yeah.
So we have that. And then you have the evidence of supposed bases on the moon. Some of it quite compelling evidence. Different people reporting this from inside NASA, outside NASA, even some astronauts referring to it. I mean, this just goes on and on and on, the amount of evidence available. And people say, well, it's not evidence if someone says it. Well, evidence is admissible in court. You can try someone, convict them, and have them executed based on witness evidence. And yet somehow when it comes to the moon, even when it's expert witnesses, even when it's officials from NASA, even when it's astronauts, we seem to discount it, and I don't know why.
Yeah, I know. Go figure. I say that all the time. It's like if a few people come out and pointed me out and says, yes, we seen him kill her, that'd be it. I'd be done for, right? But when a few people come out and say, yeah, we seen, especially astronauts. I mean, and there was a transmission at one point, there was a transmission caught where when they got on the moon that they said that they were being watched, didn't they?
Oh yeah, and there was and I can't remember her name, but there was a commander of one of the space shuttles. I was watching it live at the time, and she's floating around in the cabin, and she's talking, and she says, "There's that alien spacecraft again," quite clearly. And then all of a sudden, the sound goes, and you still see her. The video feed's still there. She's still floating around, and you can see her mouth moving, but you can't hear any more what she's saying. They switched her to a private channel.
Wow. Wow. That could explain, again, I brought this up a few times with other guests, but I remember Art Bell saying one night that he had interviewed a few different astronauts, and he had asked them all the same question. What was it like that moment when you were on the moon, to actually be on the moon? And they didn't remember what it felt like exactly. I mean, how do you not remember what it felt like? I mean, that's what he said they told him. So... interesting. So I wonder, they say, hey, we're going to decontaminate you. Really, when they're decontaminating, they're scrambling your thoughts, maybe putting in, I don't know, editing your tape, if you will.
It does make you wonder, because I can't imagine anyone not remembering the time they first stepped out onto the moon, or even stayed in the craft when they landed on the moon and looked out the window. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, that would be, well, it's like my first time looking at the Grand Canyon. It's just something you never forget.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just, I don't know. That'd be like me saying I don't remember the first time I, was live on the air and people were listening. I remember I was sweating bullets that night. So
I was too, actually. It was on Coast to Coast, and I heard how many millions of people were listening in.
Oh, I know. I'm telling you, it's got to grow on you. You've got to, you
have to work up to it.
You do. I mean, was Coast your first big show?
Well, they don't get much bigger, actually. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I also did Art Bell's Midnight in the Desert not too long ago, a couple months ago actually.
Yeah.
And I have done a national broadcast in UK just a few weeks ago. And so I'm getting used to the bigger crowds.
I was gonna say you're getting used to it then. You're
right.
fine. Hey,
I did a speech in front of the Library of Congress as well last April, I think it was. And so, yeah, that was tough because you're in a theater, you're on a stage, and that's a little, with all these eyes staring at you. And I must say, they were a tough crowd.
Well, yeah, you can't just like here. I could at least mute my mic. I could even say, something went wrong and, get my wits back about me. But when you're on stage, that's it. You're luck. There. Yeah. Oh, I got an email from somebody. It's titled Moon Phase, and I've been saving this for tonight. He says, I was listening to your show at Dr. Rand. This was several nights ago. He said, I heard a question about the moon eclipse from top to bottom. I didn't see the eclipse because I'm too far west, I think. He says I was... anyways, let's see here. So he says, I think it makes sense that we have a wobble causing shadows on the moon. I know it doesn't do that every night, but, okay, so according to his email, he says that, and I've had a few people tell me this, they notice, like, changes on the moon, like a wobble to the Earth. I guess I look at the moon and I haven't noticed it, but...
Well, I haven't heard of a wobble on the moon. In fact, that was one of the oddities. It doesn't wobble like it should. It does wobble some, but nothing like it should, whereas the Earth wobbles quite a bit. As for shadows on the moon, yes, I don't know if they're referring to a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse. Lunar eclipse, you're more likely to see the shadow effect. A solar eclipse, if it's total, you wouldn't see anything except a black disk. So I'm not quite sure what they're referring to there. I do know that the moon has libration, that there's enough of a wobble between the Earth and the moon, between the two of them, that we actually see more than 50% of the surface of the moon. We see more like 60-something% because we get a little bit on each side every once in a while. When you put it all together, it gives us a bigger image.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know. I've had people tell me, well, they look at the moon and they could see a wobble from the Earth, that apparently the Earth is wobbling. I haven't noticed it. I mean, I look at the moon every night and I don't know, it seemed normal to me, I guess. So, one time I questioned why it, one night it's in this spot and the next night it's, totally different spot, but that was explained to me. So I don't know if I have any more questions except for, who's up there and who's on it now. That's what I really want to know. But we got some questions here from the listeners here. Diamond asks, what did they find in Operation Clementine? That was a fascinating mission 94. I don't know.
Well, Clementine, I believe, refers to the satellite, Clementine satellite.
Uh-huh.
Is that what they're?
Sometimes I would guess so.
But I'm not sure quite in what respect. I do know that we did crash a satellite into the moon, and because we wanted to raise dust and see if there was water vapor in the dust, and apparently they did find some water vapor, but Clementine, it was a joint space project, and it was with the Ballistic Missile Defense Organization as well, and it was designed to French satellite was designed to impact the moon when it finished doing what it was supposed to do, I believe, if I'm thinking of the right satellite. And there are some, though. There was a photograph that was discovered lying on the desk of a NASA employee, a scientist, and they were interviewing him, and it just happened that he had these photographs spread on part of his desk, and the photographer with the journalist took a picture of the pictures, and in it there is a square-shaped, what looks like a fortress or fort, right in the area where the Clementine satellite is supposed to impact the moon. And there's a lot of conjecture that it might have been deliberately done to wipe out the remains of that ruin so people wouldn't spot it in later photographs.
That makes a lot of sense. That's just like when they sent a missile into a crater. I remember this was, I don't know how many years ago, probably almost 9 years ago, I think it was. I remember me and a coworker watching. We're expecting to see this big, something, and we're watching, and it's nothing. They say, oh, it hit. I didn't even see a flash. So I'm thinking, I bet they sent a missile up there just to destroy something.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember if it was Clementine that they impacted on the moon or not. There was a satellite that they did do that to, and it was right in the area of that photograph. But offhand, I can't honestly tell you if Clementine was that particular satellite or not. I do know that it was designed to map the moon, and its surface mineralogy and that sort of thing. I do remember that. But as for which one actually impacted the moon, I'd have to look that up for you.
And I guess then Russia, China, India, and these other countries, they must be in on something with the U.S. because, You would think that, China would circle the moon and they'd see, what's going on up there if there was anything. Do you think that one of those countries would spill the beans? And that's one of the arguments that we were on the moon is, some say, well, if we weren't, you don't think Russia and China would rat us out quick?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if we had never been to the moon, Russia and China would have been quick to jump on and expose us as a hoax. They would have loved to. We were in the height of the Cold War at that time. Oh, by the way, Clementine was the one that had a malfunction. I believe it was a computer malfunction, and it never actually made it to the moon, and it stayed in a geosync orbit instead. I think that's the one is what he's talking about. And so that isn't the one that crashed into the moon. So,
Okay.
but 1994 that's been a while for me.
Yeah, it's been a while for all of us.
So, I'd be interested to know more about what his question intended, if you know what I mean. I'd like to know what he was asking specifically.
Okay. All right. Yeah. If you want to follow up, send a question in. BR1 asks, could you ask your guest that if the moon was hollow, how could it have had that much of a gravitational pull?
Well, see, that's the thing. When they say the moon is hollow, they don't mean it's just like an eggshell. It definitely has an outer crust that could be 20, 25 miles or more thick. The two scientists who proposed the idea of the spaceship moon theory were two Russian scientists, members of the Soviet Academy of Sciences. So they were renowned in their field at the time, and they felt that there was an outer crust of the moon and then an inner metal shell of some type, perhaps titanium, since we found titanium on the surface of the moon, and that inside that would be the hollow area. So the moon would definitely have mass, it would definitely have gravity, but the weird part is, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have enough mass. It's too light, if you want to, I mean, in space nothing has weight, but the moon does not have enough density for its size. It should be, if it's made of the same material even throughout, it should have more mass and more gravitational pull than it does.
They've been talking about now possibly changing the definition of a planet. And if they did so, I read that they said that the moon would then become another planet. They said that our solar system would have so many more planets in it.
Yeah, if they based it on the idea that it has enough mass to round itself out into a sphere shape, that you might want to consider a planet under those circumstances.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Daryl asks, does it ever rain on the moon? I don't think it does it? Maybe it does.
The only way it could possibly rain on the moon is if a comet or an asteroid struck, blew up, and then material rained back on the planet, including what might be water, because comets have a lot of ice in them. But if he's talking about weather-wise, no, there's no rain on the moon.
All right. Why did NASA not give the public the color view of the moon when we supposedly landed on the moon?
Well, there were color photographs, but we were beaming in black and white at the time. And so, I mean, a lot of your television images from that period are black and white just by their very nature. Plus, color cameras are much bigger and heavier at that time than the black and white ones were. So we used a lot of black and white, but we did have color cameras on the moon, and there are color photos from the surface of the moon, but they were developed back here on Earth.
I see. All right. Does your guest support the electric universe theory?
Okay, that's a new one for me. I've heard of a lot of theories of the universe, including string theory, simulation theory, holographic theory, and I have not heard of the electric theory. So he's just thrown me a new ball. So
okay, all right. And then there's another one here. What does your guest know about computer code found in string theory? Speaking of string theory,
that I can talk about. Yes, that was discovered, and they found, or one scientist in particular found it, that there was what appeared to be computer code in it. And upon examination, it turned out to not just be computer code, but block linear self-correcting computer code. The exact same computer code that search engines like Google and Yahoo use to correct data stream flows so that when they arrive, they're not corrupted.
All right.
So built into the very fabric of the mathematical theory of our universe is self-correcting code. So if it were a simulation, it would have to have self-correcting code.
Interesting. All right.
Spooky.
Yeah, it really is. I've just read today where they're theorizing that perhaps alien life forms have gotten so far advanced that we just can't see them, and that they're actually dark matter and blending in, and and kind of made me think maybe they're on the same wavelength as ghosts, and that's how they move the way they do. I don't know. Maybe they know something we don't.
Well, dark matter is far more prevalent in our universe than regular matter is. In fact, you could almost say our regular universe that we see, planets, stars, galaxies, is kind of like cream floating on the surface of a cup of coffee before it's stirred. Everything below that is dark matter. We can't figure out what the heck it is. And if you're sitting on that little clot of cream floating there, you don't know that all that exists because it's not in your universe, but it's still part of the universe. So yeah, that could be true. Also, if we're developing stealth capabilities, and we have with bombers and fighters already, and ships, why would an advanced species be able to take that far further than we have?
That's a good question. But, you know, who knows? Maybe they got bigger brains.
Or maybe they just developed a lot. You know, you could have, there's the dawn world theory. That is that you could have highly advanced species that aren't half as bright as humans are. That they just simply took a lot longer to achieve an advanced level, like maybe 1 million, 2 million, 3 million years of civilization before they achieved it. They took the long road, whereas we might be considered geniuses and upstarts by their standards. And then, of course, you have the flip side, which means they might have greater brain capacities, and we're idiots compared to them.
Yeah, or, you know, there's this other side of the coin, too, where perhaps they, you know, were somewhat primitive in technology. Like maybe they were only able to get to their moon, like that same distance. They got there and they stumbled upon a bunch of technology.
That's true too. But as any civilization advances, it comes to a point where it has to realize there must be other civilizations in the universe. And if only a few percent of those civilizations are evil, adversarial, whatever you want, aggressive, whatever you want to call them, it could be highly dangerous to be on a planet broadcasting. In fact, Stephen King says one of the worst things we could be doing is broadcasting like we are into space, announcing that we're here. It might have negative repercussions. So I could readily see some races, if they felt they were to be attacked or a fear of attack, hollowing out moons and asteroids and leaving their solar system. They'd be generational ships. They could carry everything they needed for literally tens of thousands of years. And it's been estimated there are more rogue planets between the stars than around solar systems. So you could get lost there, and especially if your civilization's inside the shell, it's not beaming any energy or broadcast out from it because it's all kept inside that lunar shell. So yeah, I could see where civilizations, that might be a survival strategy.
Yeah, again, it's also damn interesting. You know, if only we knew. Now they just found all these 7 new planets in this solar system. What is it? Triplet? Is it called?
TRAPPIST.
TRAPPIST, that's it. And you know, who knows what they'll find there? I mean, really, all we need to do is spot some satellites floating around another planet, and we know they're advanced, right? Assuming they'd use something like that.
Well, with our present technology, finding a satellite would be very difficult, especially in the glare of the host sun. But we could look for evidence in the atmosphere of those planets. We could look for methane, we could look for oxygen, we could look for water vapor, that sort of thing. And if there's water vapor, oxygen, and methane, it's a good bet that that planet has life on it.
All right, I'll tell you what, hang on one more time. We've got to take our last break. All right, folks, we are back. This is Late Night in the Midlands. I'm Michael Vera, and again, I want to welcome, and I'll do this a few times because I'm excited. You should be excited too. WCET 87.7 FM, Columbia, South Carolina. You're getting a little shock treatment there, like, oh my God. Oh my God, there is a show that covers everything. Yeah, see? Now you've got us. Now you got a variety, I guess. And I don't know. I think you're gonna grow attached to this show a little bit because we cover it all. You're not gonna get politics every night. You're not gonna get UFOs every night. You're not gonna get people making love to aliens. Where else are you gonna get that? But right here on Late Night in the Midlands. So anyhow, folks, we're going to get back to it here. I'm going to finish up with my guest, Rob Shelsky. And if you've got any questions before we're done tonight, by all means, get them in and we'll ask. And then I don't know, probably the last 45 minutes of tonight's show, Mr. Peter Kling will be chiming in with me, and so we'll try to, like I say, we try to take calls. I don't know. Skype has treated us like the redheaded stepchild. You know, we're not getting the same privileges as our brothers and sisters for some reason. I don't know. Maybe they just got it out for us. But it'd be nice, with the affiliates we have and everything now, and YouTube and all the other places. We're on iTunes, TuneIn. God knows where else. all kinds of places. We should see the calls start pouring in. They were pouring in until we had problems with the phone line. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, let's get back to it with my guest, and I'm going to get back to your questions. I don't know how many questions. Well, we might have gotten down to the last one here, maybe, unless there's more and I don't know about it. Okay, so Rob, we are back. Listen, I'm going to try to take a call here, and if it hangs up on you, I will call you right back. So just let's try this. Here we go. Let's see what happens. Oh, it works. All right, DC, welcome to Late Night in the Midlands. How are you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
The system. It's your worst nightmare.
Well, welcome aboard. You got a question for it? Works.
It works. That's all I'm calling in for. It's working right now. Praise the Lord.
All right. Well, listen. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. And
this is DC. If you didn't know, I mean, you didn't say.
Well, yeah, I know, and yes, it says right here on the screen, DC. So
yeah, how about that?
Yeah, look at it. You got your own
amazing
name. Yeah,
it's working.
It is working.
It's Friday. Go for it, baby.
All right, have a good one, my friend. Thank you for calling. It is Friday night, as you can tell. All right, so we've got a question here from Lotus. Lotus says, how come the dust particles aren't floating around above the surface if there's less gravity there on the surface of the moon?
Well, there's nothing to move it, nothing to kick up a cloud. There's no wind, there's no rain, there's no nothing, supposedly, that would disturb the dust. The dust was a very big problem for the Apollo 11 missions. It clung to them. It had a kind of a staticky feel to it, and they had an awful time getting it off their suits. It was really actually dangerous. But no, you wouldn't see dust. You see dust storms on Mars because there's an atmosphere and the wind blows, but and it's an incredibly thin wind. The Martian atmosphere is not very thick either, but a good deal more than the moon. And so no, you're not going to see dust flying around on the moon.
Okay, and last but not least here, ETs. Now, do you think there are friends, or you don't think there are friends?
Well, I think there's more than one ET, type of ET. And my feeling is that, no, they're not our quote-unquote space brothers. I think they either have it in for us in some way or other. They have some goal or plan that involves us in some way, which we are not overtly a part of, unless the government's involved with it somehow, but we as citizens are not. I think they might be amoral in the sense that they don't have the morals we do. I don't think they necessarily believe that in rights or ethics the way we would do, which means they may not be evil, but just amoral. But the end result for us is the same. When people are abducted against their will, when they're injured in UFO encounters, when they're killed in UFO encounters, when people disappear in the thousands every year from around the world, I mean tens of thousands, you have to then come to the conclusion that they don't have our best interests at heart.
I can't argue with you there. That's what I say. If they are, I imagine, look, it's like everything else, good and bad, right? You got dogs who will lick you, dogs that'll bite you. You've got ants that'll just crawl over you, and ants that will bite you. So, I mean, good and bad and everything. And I think that, with ET too. However, I don't trust anything that's secretive, and ET's been awful secretive, and ET could easily break the secret. I mean, right now if they wanted to. So
well, I always ask this question. I can point out to you countless cases of people being injured and killed, of damage to property, of animal mutilations, of this sort of thing, that we all ascribe to UFOs, and I think rightfully so. And yet I can't think of a single instance where they did something good, like take Hansel and Gretel out of the woods by shining the beam of light to light their way, or beaming someone out of a burning house that are with people trapped inside. I've never seen anything good. Now, Travis Walton says that he thinks the reason for his abduction, and he came up with this long after it happened, was that they didn't mean to hurt him, so they took him on board to make him better, and yet they kept him a week and they dumped him and scrubbed his memories. And whenever you abduct someone against their will, that to me is a violation of human rights. And if there are good ETs, why aren't they doing something to stop it? Now, some people say, well, they know that some ETs are bad, but their losses, they can't interfere. Well, then, good or bad, they're not doing us much good, are they, if they're not helping us?
Well, that's true, but then you look at the human race, and we're doing the same thing we accuse them of. Really, we go out in the ocean, we grab a dolphin or something, or a shark, and we tag it, and we put it back in, and that shark probably goes down into the waters and says it's true. There is other life up there, and I was abducted, and no one believes them.
Yes, we do that, but there's also many instances where human beings help animals as well, including
True.
dolphins,
Well, that's
including
true.
beached whales. In fact, it just happened in New Zealand. There's a massive crowd just formed trying to save all these whales and beach themselves down there. This happens all the time, and yet I'll make this a challenge to your public. Give me an instance where aliens actually did something good, not something that people said they did, like told them that the Earth is on the verge of a nuclear war and that we have to change our behavior. I mean something concrete, like saving someone's life or saving someone that has been injured or where they weren't involved in injuring them in the first place. Just something good. I can name countless bad things. Can anyone name something good?
Oh, that's a good question. Can anyone name anything good? Now, I've had abductees come on my show who have had said it was a great experience, and others who said it wasn't. Me personally, I see it as a crime being committed. You're taking somebody without their permission, and then on top of that, I mean, it's like the date rape drug. They drug them up so they don't know what happened. I don't know if that's exactly what happens, but probably not. But along the same lines, why is it okay for them? And we got a real problem because we have a government who we know has an interest and knowledge of what's going on, and yet at least that we're not alone. They know this, and yet they stay in denial.
Oh, I think the government's intimately involved in some respects. All of the government, I don't know, but yeah, I think there's a secret branch of the government, or branches, or a secret government, if you will. Senator Inouye said there was a secret government with its own military, aircraft and ships even. So with these black projects, all the money funneling into that, sure, they could develop that sort of thing. They could reverse engineer UFOs and have their own fleet if they wanted to. But the term abducted says it all. If someone's abducted, it means it's, by the very definition of the word, it's against their will. They are taken. They're not invited. And whenever you're taken against your will, that is a violation of your rights, and that is not a kind act.
I agree with you. And somebody had brought up Bigfoot and Bigfoot possibly being ET. We've gone over this one a lot. I think if Bigfoot's real, it would have to be some kind of technology nut, whether it be ET or interdimensional, right? I mean, or do you think it's just the Bigfoot? Do you not go that far?
Well, David Paulides thinks it's so. There was even an episode of X-Files about the Brown Mountain Lights, which I went and photographed myself here in North Carolina, and as being to do with ET. So the conjecture's been around a long, long time. Does Bigfoot exist? I think there's a probability, more than a possibility, a probability that it does. Is it related to the ETs? Well, yeah, I think it could very well be somehow related to them. I'm not sure in what capacity, if they are a genetic engineering offspring, if they're a hybrid, or what they are. But yeah, I think they're either interdimensional or something to do with the ETs.
All right. And listen, what I'd like to do is give you the floor to get out anything else that you like. And I want to thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And when we've got everything working correctly, I'm surprised that call came through because it's just not been working. But maybe we could do this again. You've got a lot of material out there, so there's a lot to talk about. And but yeah, go ahead. Anything you want to get out there, appearances or whatever, go right ahead. And thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, thank you very much. I enjoyed the show immensely. Some of the questions were tough. They were unexpected. The electric theory of the universe was a good one. But yeah, I will be at a conference in Baltimore, or just south of Baltimore, in October, and I will be doing 2 presentations there. I am doing a presentation at the North Carolina State MUFON meeting on March the 4th on the deadly UFOs and the disappeared. And I do have a new book that's in the works. It should be coming out by no later than October, and it deals with Mars and the secret space fleet agenda and the idea that Phobos might also be a hollow moon.
All right, fantastic. Well, I'll be interested to talk to you about that one too. So, all right. Well, listen, thank you again, and keep up the great work. And we'll do this again real soon.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Have a great night. All right, folks, there he goes, Rob Shelsky. He is linked up on latenightinthemidlands.com. You can go on over, click on the link. It'll take you right over to him. He's been on some other shows, too, so you could find a lot out there. The moon, it's a very interesting topic. It really is. And, you would think that NASA, we'd be all over it. You would think, but I don't know what's going on. You have to believe that somebody was up there and said, don't come back. Come on. Why wouldn't we? It's right there. Let's go already. Jeez, the Flintstones could pedal themselves there. Anyhow, next up is Peter Kling, and Peter and I are going to, we're going to reminisce here for the next 45 minutes with you. We'll try to take calls with you as well. Sometimes with Peter, it's Skype. I don't know what to tell you, except for sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. So let's go ahead and bring Mr. Kling along. I'm telling you, it's like summer here. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful weather. Peter Kling, I welcome you back to Late Night in the Midlands.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. It's a pleasure to be here. And as a matter of fact, tonight, it's an extra pleasure to be here. I have to thank you.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, I do. Because I have to consider that it was your comment to George Norey, which has got me a possible interview on Coast to Coast. Isn't that fantastic?
All right.
They actually, George must have taken it back with them, because I was talking to the greatest publishers that I know, Neely Publishing, and they're representing me, and they said that Coast to Coast contacted them requesting me for an interview. So, wow.
I told you, George. See, George likes me. There's no friction there. Why should there be, right?
Well, I don't know what the whole situation was, but it's kind of odd, because it's almost 7 years ago, I guess, under the old regime, as George put it, the night that you were talking with him, that I reached out to Coast. This was right after the Gulf oil disaster, and first call, bang, I went right to Lisa Lyon, who was the producer, and I guess now she's the executive producer and a little bit more higher up in Coast to Coast than what she used to be.
She's moving on up.
But yeah, she is the decision maker now, I guess. But I read her. I said, we all see what's going on with the Gulf oil disaster, and I explained who I was, what I did, and, expert in biblical prophecy and hermeneutics. And so I quoted her, I read her, actually, Revelation 8, 8, and 9, which said exactly what we saw with the Gulf oil disasters. John said, I saw something like a burning mountain being thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became as the blood of a dead man, and a third of the souls in the sea died, and a third of the boats were wrecked. We didn't find out about the boats until about the following year. A third of the Louisiana fishing fleet went out of business. They never sailed again. So a third of the boats were wrecked, figuratively speaking. So it's just interesting. When I told her that information, you would have thought I handed her a winning lottery ticket for, like
yeah.
With a Powerball or something. She just became so excited. This is fantastic. We have to, we got to get you on the show. And I said, hey, back at that time, I was like a nobody.
But Peter, I could tell you what the biggest difference was. There was somebody out there who was putting a big stake in things, and he went by the name of Hoagland.
I would tend to have to agree with that, because I had a Facebook friend that this was maybe about a year ago, maybe a little bit more. But she writes me and she goes, wow, we got to get you on Dark Matter. And she says, the producer's a personal friend of mine. And so she set the whole thing up. So I didn't call right away. I let it sit a couple of days. And I called up Dark Matter. I forgot who the gal was that I talked to. And she was surprised to hear from me. She was like, oh, I wasn't expecting your call. That's literally what she said. I guess she was expecting a call from somebody else. So, but she knew who I was because she was alerted. And I guess she went and did some checking. Man, you want to talk about the fast shuffle. I was told that, what's his name over there? I forgot. He was booked with guests, and they weren't taking any future guests. And she gave me the quick shuffle to Hoagland, to Hoagland's producer, and I laughed at her.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you were talking to the chick that's, I consider her part of the Scooby-Doo crew, it's like she stepped right out of the Mystery Machine.
I forgot her name, and I can't. It was just kind of. I just got the quick shuffle to a voicemail where I left a message. Never heard back from anybody again. What a surprise!
Well,
so it's like when this all came about, it was like, seriously. Now we'll see if I get on the show and if I get to talk about Letters to Earth and the situation that we find ourselves in today. It's most interesting. I really enjoyed what Rob had to say about aliens. Yeah. I want to go there tonight.
Okay, well, let's go there. And hey, thanks for sharing the good news. That's good to see. See, who said bridges were burnt? They just needed to be repaired. That's all.
That pretty much it. Once you get the obstruction out of the road, you can get past.
Yeah, exactly.
So whatever it was that was there, it was like I gave up. I was invited to a bunch of, to speak at different events and whatnot, and it always seemed that Noré was involved in these events, and it'd be like, yeah, I think the last time I got an invite was about 3 years ago, and I laughed at the guy who gave me the invite. I said, yeah, you'll never get me past your screeners, and sure enough, nope, didn't happen.
Yeah, well.
So we'll have to see what happens with this. I'm all excited, and I know that the good folks over at Neely Publishing are all excited, and it is great news. Here's the fantastic thing, Michael, is that the world, well, a good portion of the world, a significant amount of the world, they claim to have 250 million listeners, 250 million people will get a taste of the truth in where we are. And not just some fabricated myth. This is scientific research. That's one of the things that I liked about what Rob was saying. Rob is one of the few people who logically looked at aliens and said, how can they be good? And he wanted somebody to point out something beneficial that aliens have done for us. And I could tell you one right off the top of my head. I wrote about it in Letters to Earth. Dr. Christian Barnard. He was the first successful heart transplant surgeon in the world out of South Africa. While he was doing the heart transplant, he claimed, and he said this publicly, he actually said it on TV on it was a talk show. It'll come to me in just a minute who the talk show host was. But he made the claim that it was his dead father who told him how to conduct the operation. Okay. Remember the movie Contact?
I do.
Who met, what's her name, when she went through the wormhole and came on the other side? Daddy?
It was Daddy, but it wasn't really Daddy.
No, we came to you in this form, because it was going to be the form that you were going to be most comfortable with.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, I've gone through the death experience. I got sent back. Thank you, Yahweh. And I'm here to talk about, I can talk about that somewhat intelligently. It really does. It explains a lot. And I'm not saying how much life there is after death, but wow, we are conscious. Make no mistake about that. We are conscious energy. And it's the same conscious energy. This is where we're made in the image of God. Now, I'm going to bring this back to the aliens. You see, most of the alien life forms that we have with us today, or soon to be even with us on a greater scale, they have been working with the military since their inception. Now, here's the interesting thing. We're getting more information out of what's being released by the Third Reich in their attempts at a UFO, and now people have found research that indicates that they did have UFOs, they were using UFOs during this time period, but they were mostly used for observation. And just day before yesterday, I saw a really grainy picture of the bell at the fly trap. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Bell was the first Nazi UFO that they were working on. It's believed to be the same thing that fell in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. It got loose, but they showed this machine, and the bottom was spinning. It looked like a bell, and they had it chained to what they had called the fly trap, which was a concrete set of arches that would hold this thing. Was basically, the bell was the fly, and this thing was chained into the fly trap so it couldn't get away. And they had heavy chains on this sucker, and it was yanking on them pretty good. And yes, it looks, you go online, you put in the Nazi Bell UFO into Google, and yeah, that's exactly what it looked like. And they said that there was like hieroglyphics writings on around it. I came across information, and not that it's new information, it was new to me. Interesting part of the symbol is the same ribbon that they use, and it was first used in remembering the troops, but now it's used for everything from remembering somebody to breast cancers. That piece of ribbon that comes around in a circle and closes, that is part of the Nazi symbol that was used for the division that was looking for extraterrestrial information, and they were looking for that link to the Nordics that
Peter,
ruled the world.
I'll tell you this, did this government, factions of this government, NASA, which is my opinion is part of the government, they know that something's going on up there, because the space station, I seen the most convincing video yet, and it's not fake, it's real. Their footage from their site, they turned it off, but all these crafts, like, they looked, I don't know what they were, they're Orbish looking, but they're going by. the camera. You see 6 of them pass by. They finally turn the camera off, and it coincides with what exactly that young man said who hacked into NASA from overseas. He said that the Navy has a space fleet. I have to believe that's probably what we see.
Where did you think those trillions of dollars went to? Plus all their black ops money. You know, it's like, yeah, of course it had to go somewhere. They're not telling you where it went.
Yeah.
You know, how many $1 trillion? Was it $9 trillion can't be accounted for by the Federal Reserve?
Oh, and who knows what else? I mean, that's just what.
Yeah, that's just the stuff we know about. Here's the thing. As Rob was saying, we've got negative ETs with us now. But we think third dimensionally. Most people don't have any idea that we live in dimensions 8, 9, and 10 of a 10-dimensional multiverse, the 11th dimension being the variable of time. So when we put this, now here's what, and I love the fact that there's a recorrecting replicated string of data in string theory that turns around and makes sure everything always works out right.
Right.
You know, that was pretty good. That was a new piece of information that I didn't know. I thought that was great. But it would have to be. It would have to be, because we know fractal science is so accurate in its predictions. It's a repeating pattern in nature. Now, according to string theory, those other 7 dimensions had to exist before our physical dimensions of 8, 9, and 10 came into being. And that's just the way the mathematics works out. And you can't fudge mathematics. It's the only exact science. The reason why it's theory is that they can't prove it past the chalkboard. But they went from string theory to M theory to superstring theory, and that's because they were groups of mathematicians that were working on the problem. They all came up with the same answer from different ends.
Or they don't want you to know it's been proven.
Well, you know, here's where
they lie about everything, you know.
Well, absolutely, and I can say this about NASA unequivocally, is that NASA is to Macy's, or is to the United States, what the Macy's fireworks display is to Macy's. It's nothing but advertisement.
Well, yeah,
it's advertisement, and oh, look at the pretty lights, you know.
Oh yeah, you know, hey, we found planets and this and that, and then they show us their artwork of them. We never see, you know, and yeah, I don't know. It's exciting that they find new solar systems and they find new planets. But you know what? Don't hold a press conference for that no more. For me, hold a press conference when you've got somebody waving back at your cameras, and then yeah, wake me up for that one.
Well, let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at the alien situation here. When we can't get a straight answer from NASA, we know that. We know that we've got aliens of some sort because we got too many people talking about it. I had my own experience, and then my life got weird. And I viewed these as totally negative ETs, considering that they told me they were going to kill me, and I should have been dead 16 times, was dead once, and got sent back.
Well, look at our friend Robert, who had the rainbow UFO. I'm still bothered by that. You know,
here's the thing. We're dealing with an energy form. One of the times that I didn't die was the situation with the stupid flying deer. The deer that tried to jump over my car while I was doing over 60 miles an hour. I watched a blue energy orb come out of nowhere and blow up like a balloon to absorb the impact. And I wish we would have stopped the impact. That would have been better, but okay.
And Peter, for anybody who says, you know, it's like me, I bring up stuff all the time. The reason we bring up these things over and over is because they were that fascinating. And that's why, Peter, I totally believe you, because in all the years I've known you, your story's never changed.
Michael, I literally sat 45 minutes waiting for my son to show up. I had driven to a safe place. It just cracked. The windshield was a mess, damaged the roof a little bit. I mean, it impacted, but it didn't come through. It never came through. And the wild thing is, it was the following Monday. It was the second story that they let off with on the news about a family of 3 that hit a doe that weighed about 90 pounds. They hit it at 45 miles an hour. It went through the front windshield and out the back windshield, putting all 3 of them in the hospital on the critical list. This deer was huge. Beautiful buck. I'm figuring the live weight had to be somewhere around 250 pounds. Coming through the windshield would have decapitated both my son and myself, without a doubt. I thought this is it. We're done.
Yeah.
And like I said, thank Yahweh, I'm still here. But here's the situation. When we go back to now, I saw this blue energy orb that instantly appeared from nowhere. I mean, and it just appeared for a second. Less than a second, probably. uh, and it was gone. It was gone. The deer was gone. And I was like, what did I just see? When we go back to the book of Enoch, he claimed to see beings that could transform, as it's written, from the form of fire to the form of man and back to the form of fire. Now, remember, this was written, well, the book of Enoch was written somewhere in the 3rd century BC. But it was the account of the life of Enoch. It wasn't written by Enoch. Enoch lived prior to the flood, which I believe is totally misdated due to carbon dating, and that's a whole nother show that we can get on with that. Yeah. So everything that's dated like 7 to 15,000 years ago is wrong. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm saying the dates are wrong. Because here's the biggest problem. If there was a global flood, where'd the water come from? Oh, from this canopy? Yeah, which would have filtered out some of the sun's rays, which would have changed the carbon dating. Because the carbon wouldn't have decayed at the same rate. So the carbon dating is wrong. Well, if you look into carbon dating, it's very suspect to begin with anyway.
The water could have came from the, we were talking earlier about the moon, when it got towed into place maybe, or whatever happened.
Whatever caused that flood. And what makes, Michael, I've researched this, and what makes the most sense is that the Earth was hit by a meteor. That there's physical evidence of it, especially when you look at the west coast of all of Western Australia. You go to Google Earth and go focus in on Western Australia. It looks like one big long beach. It really does. And then as you get down toward the bottom, there's all salt deposits.
Hold on, Peter. I'm trying to take a call here. Let's see if it works. There it is.
Looking at the alien factor, when we look at the scriptures, there is essentially a record of 6,000 years of alien intervention in human affairs. And that's something you're never going to hear from a church, but it's exactly what's there.
That's
it's
right.
The whole record. Even when it comes down to Jesus, where'd they get perfect human DNA on this planet? And who made the announcement? Oh, this guy named Gabriel.
Hey,
where did he come from?
Peter, we're very fortunate that the phone worked, so I'm going to take this call. Yes, 530 area code. You are on Late Night in the Midlands. First name and where you're calling from.
I am. My name is Brian. I'm calling from Northern California.
Oh, darn. Well, welcome. You're not floating away over there.
No, not yet. But I'm not. I'm about 45 minutes from where the Oroville Dam was about to spill.
Ooh. Well, keep safe.
How's that dam doing?
As of right now, they've lowered it so far. There's a lot of dams above it that need to release, but they've lowered it far enough to where there's not going to be anything catastrophic.
Well, that's good to hear. I had to ask that question. There's so many people and so many lives at risk below that dam, and I know that they evacuated. Boy, that's got to be hard on those people. Just the stress of having to pick up and leave. Yeah.
Honestly, I had about 7 people that came up from the Yuba City area that were evacuated. When I think it was 188,000 were evacuated. That was what they put on the news, at least. And they literally would drive for 45 minutes to go a quarter of a mile. I mean, it was pretty bad.
Friday traffic trying to get out of New York City. Yeah, I know what that's about.
So what's on your mind?
I went to. I was actually on the live chat earlier, and I said something about the electric universe. It was something that Wallace Thornhill had put out. I don't know if you guys are familiar with any of his work.
I'm familiar a little bit.
I've heard the term, but I'm not familiar with it at all. I've heard it mentioned. I was like, what else would it be? But go ahead, please.
Well, there's literally so many possibilities to it. It's almost like one of those things where if you haven't taken enough time to understand what it's really about, then it's very hard to explain in a short answer. But I was thinking it'd just be like an interesting guest to have on, and as I said, I've actually been just an avid listener since I found out about your channel. So totally love your work.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of, help from outside and guests like Peter. So thank you. And listeners like you.
I'll answer your question about the electric universe, though, just based on string theory. And the Higgs boson particle, or the God particle, as I like to call it. And this goes back down right to the creator itself as being pure dynamic energy. All energy is made up of string. Whether it's linear or circular, it's a vibrating piece of pure energy that is within the atom. And to give you an atom is what is it? One part solid for 4 million parts empty space. I mean, think about that. That's wild. And that's the building block of everything. And so it all comes down to this little tiny piece of string, or the God particle. So, yeah, everything is going to be electric. Electric is made up of the same thing. Light is made up of the same thing. It's all string energy. And we can't separate ourselves from it. And when we look at it using fractal science, we are part of the creator. It's just that simple. We are like taste buds on a tongue.
I would agree with
seriously,
that.
we're sending back information to the consciousness of what is our physical universe. That's probably the best way to explain it.
I would agree with that. Like cells in a body, like God,
Yeah.
we're cells within that body. Just some of us might be the feet and the butt, and, and we might switch spots later. I don't know.
What's the largest organ? What's the largest organ we have? It's our skin.
Well,
what does our skin do? It feels. Think about that. Our largest organ is a sensory perception input. And then we've got hearing, and we got sight, we got taste, we got smell, and we can experience all of these physical things on a level that this consciousness cannot experience unless it comes through us. So to have the chaos that we have on this planet has to end. It's like taking a bite of a rotten apple.
Well, I definitely agree with that one.
You spit it right out. And that's the situation, but it's happening on a cosmic scale. But it's more complicated than just that. When we extrapolate the information that's contained within the scriptures, and this starts out with what we can call the beta test of humans, or the beta test of Earth, where humans were given the fight or flight response, and that's written right there within the scriptures. You see, we would never understand this until the latter part of the 20th century, because that's when all this technology was invented. All these sciences that we needed to comprehend what's written in the Bible were invented the last half of the 20th century, and they're still coming up with sciences to answer questions. And that's why you need to know the science. Religion ain't never going to tell you this. They're never going to tell you this, because as soon as the aliens show up, they're done. It's just that simple. We created you guys. I wrote the backstory. I can't believe this. I literally wrote the backstory for the Galactic Federation of Light. When they came out and gave their backstory, it was chapters 3 and 4 of Letters to Earth. I was like, what are you guys kidding me?
Well, yeah,
I don't know how your brain doesn't explode, man.
I don't either. He's like a library, this guy.
Well,
exactly.
Here's the situation, and it's not that I'm so great. It's just that I've had such a screwed up life. Seriously, here I was a kid, 9 years old. I got to see something that happened in the future in a dream. Then I got to live through it. That'll change your paradigh.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing was that I had already had 4 years. I had 5 years of biblical education. I had already had more education about the Bible than most people on this planet get in a lifetime. And I knew about the prophet Samuel, and I knew how Yahweh used him to correct the high priest and to condemn what his sons were doing. I knew all of this. Wow. And I remember laying there in bed after my mother sent me to bed, after I told her I had a dream that came true. I'm thinking about it, and I had to know how it was possible. So I started studying science. Interesting. The spiritual door got slammed in my face, and it made me turn to science for the answers. And if I didn't do that, I couldn't explain all this today. So it's been a 50-year journey.
The best education doesn't come from a classroom, in my opinion, but it's life, it's experience. That's where the best education comes, and that's why people need to pay attention. That's the biggest class you'll ever have. So
yeah, wisdom is what we get when we didn't get what we wanted.
That's right. That's right. Hey, anything else?
I used to pray for wisdom a lot when I was a teenager. I remember I was sitting through one of the classes, and they were covering King Solomon, and when Solomon became king, Yahweh asked him what he wanted, and he prayed for wisdom, and God was so impressed. He gave him wisdom, ultimate wisdom, and he gave him everything that he could possibly want to go along with that. And I thought, wow, if you have wisdom, you have everything else. Little did I know.
Absolutely. And listen, thank you for the call from California. I'm going to move on because we got another call here, and I don't want to pile them up. 229 area code. You are on Late Night in the Midlands. First name and where you're calling from.
Good evening, guys. This is David. I'm from South Georgia. And, Peter, I just heard what you said about having something in your childhood that you saw and then watch it come true. And I have had so many similar things happen to where now I have to come out of the swamp and start speaking up about the things I saw as a child that came true. Like visions of the Virgin Mary when I got my first communion with the Catholic Church. Nobody else saw it, but there it was for me, and I've had other experiences like that. And for right now, it's very so interesting that people are waking up. And one thing I think we need to do to people, and I wanted to get this across, excuse me,
Sure.
is that we need to be nicer to people. Like, for example, some of these folks on the liberal news and the underground news, they're calling each other names and libtards and all this. We need to stop calling names with each other. We're never going to get there if we keep this name calling, because that's a negative energy. And I'd like to know your input on that.
Oh, my. Thank you for asking.
Go ahead, Peter.
You know, with all the research I've done, with all the education that I put myself through, with everything that I've lived through, in everything within the scriptures, it all comes down to one thing, and we can now prove this scientifically. It comes down to what Jesus called the greatest commandment, and you hit the nail on the head, and this is key. This is key to our future. The greatest commandment says, Jesus said, you must love Yahweh your God with your whole heart, soul, and mind, and you must love your neighbor as you do yourself. Now, just the very act of love takes us out of that beta wanna fight syndrome, okay? That's the beta test of Earth. We want to fight. We have free will. We want to fight. We can take it to the streets. You want to step up? Come on.
Hey, as long as I don't turn on the fake news, I don't get that feeling. But go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, but you see, we don't have that response when we are in a state of love. When we are in alpha, what is called alpha, where our brains vibrate between 8 and 12 hertz per second. When we are in that state, we cannot experience dislike. We can't experience negativity because we are literally, our brain doesn't have that operating system. We're in the wrong operating system. And so in order to do that, we have to change from alpha up to beta in order to have a fight. You'll never have a fight in alpha. It's impossible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so
I'm a lifetime puppeteer and storyteller, and I've had several death experiences. One was like a 4-day journey, and I woke up in a whole different paradigm. When I came back out of the woods and looked around at the world, I went, oh my God. And how I watch people growing up with the iPhone syndrome. And now they say, hey, come and visit me. But there are 5 people in the room and they're all looking at their iPhones and no conversation with me. Why should I go visit?
Yeah.
That's artificial intelligence. You know, here's the issue. Yep. Jay Leno, back when he was doing the Tonight Show, he had that piece Jaywalking where he'd go interview people, and you know, you'd have people just dumb as a post.
You know, there's a guy
that was over 20 years ago. That was over 20 years ago. So those people who are dumb as a post gave birth to the snowflake.
And they educated them. And the only way the snowflake escaped that, you know, and didn't become a snowflake is if they actually did their own research. See, when I was growing up, we were rebellious, kind of. You know, we're going to do what we want. We know everything. So, you know, we learned on our own. And so, thankfully, I wasn't brainwashed. But, you know, anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. I'm 64 years old, and I, watched Kennedy get, the whole thing with that, and I saw Oswald get shot that Sunday morning, etc. So my conspiracy theory goes back to when I was 10 years old, and they haven't proved it right since. I wanted to make a point. Doggone it.
Did I make you forget? I'm sorry. you got to think of your point. Here's something that's interesting, and it's in Acts, the 2nd chapter, and it starts off the 17th verse, and it says that, I'll just paraphrase it. It's Peter quoting the prophet Joel, and he says that God's Spirit would be poured out on all sorts of flesh, and they would prophesy. Even upon the servants, on his servants, he would pour out his Spirit, and they would prophesy too. And we've got all these people, regardless of whether they look at Jesus as the Messiah or as the coming King of Kings and Lord of Lords. We're talking about a paradigm shift in who is controlling this planet. People say, oh, yeah, Jesus Christ, yeah, right, But they'll admit that we live in a satanic system of evil that needs to end. We're in for a real interesting alien awakening, or ET awakening.
And something else, too, and I saw it the other day. I'll make this point, and then I'll get off it. A good friend of mine that I've known for 25 years or so, and he's got a very analytical mind. So we have these very deep discussions. Well, somehow I'm not a Democrat anymore. And I turned Republican, for God's sake. I'm an old hippie. How did I end up a Republican and voting for Trump? And
that's funny.
I support it. you know. And it's like, but I look back at my Democratic friends and all the stuff that's going on, and I go, folks, what are you doing? You know, we fought for this back in the 60s, and now you're out there protesting over stupid stuff.
And, and look at our colleges. Look at our colleges. You got some of these colleges where they want to, oh, there's food carts only for black people, and hey, this space is only for white people, or this. I mean, they're like trying to bring segregation in all over again.
They are.
Exactly.
Absolutely, they are.
So I was trying to explain to you, and I've been doing
Obama.
observations of the sun and the moon and the stars in relative position to when I walk outside my back door, and I know from the charts that I've made that I'm going to publish on a YouTube video soon that the sun is wobbling big time. And if you watch the stars at all, last night Orion was way in the south to me, and tonight it's more up where it needs to be. That's a 15-degree wobble in 24 hours. And that's going on right now. I think, Peter, you made a statement last week about that, something like that.
Oh,
and
well,
I concur. And there are other people on the YouTube videos that I made about the Earth wobble, and everybody else is going, yeah, I agree with you, bud. You know, Earth's wobbling, because you can see the signs with a sundial. As simple as that.
Yeah, that was actually the theory behind the wobble. What's causing the wobble is the Earth's iron core. It's molten, remember. It's still iron. It's liquid. and
well, I understand that.
Yeah, so it's gathering. It's gathering in one place now. Now that means that there's something with a lot of magnetic energy coming this way.
Absolutely.
Oh, hell.
Yeah.
One of the things that I saw, though, when talking with this person was, as I tried to explain what my observations here at my house, forget all the conspiracy theorists, look at what my data says and what my evidence shows, and can you believe me? And he just flat out said, oh, you're crazy. And I was like, no, these are data points that I did in my house and my yard where things, where the sun came up, where it set, where the moon is, etc. And, for whatever the reason, people need to understand that the Earth is wobbling. Now, we can speculate as to why, but if we first look at the paradigm that it is happening, that's number one. And we need to convince folks that, hey, things can happen like this on a daily basis. We're not dying except for the floods and the storms. We can, we can deal with this, but we need to be aware that this is actually happening. And he can't grasp it. With all his intelligence, he goes back into the old paradigm, the old 3D, and refuses to look at any data, even if it's coming from a 25-year friend.
Yeah, and that's why people think we're crazy. Most of my family doesn't talk to me.
Listen, I don't hold back when I'm around family. Yeah, I don't hold back. I say it like it is. I mean, when the election was happening, I had my signs out front proudly, and I know there was surprised some neighbors who didn't like it. I had a mail lady curse me out as she pulled up one day. I mean, hey, the hell with you. I stand up for what I believe in, and if you don't want to speak to me no more, it's because you can't win the argument. I don't know what to tell you.
You know what just boggles my mind about the whole thing, Michael, is that there's so much corruption that we're now starting to find out. Well, if you did any research into the Clinton folks,
have I ever?
Governor, that there's a line of dead bodies there that's just ultimately wrong.
Like 40-some, I think I counted. We did it one night. It took me a whole week. During the beginning of the show, I'd go through so many of them every night. And, well, boy, it's a big count. And there's a guy who just came out not too long ago who said that he feared his life from Japan. Or China. He helped him. I'll get the story together and share it with people, but I'm paraphrasing.
And the people are so brainwashed, or maybe I should say brain dead, because of AI, that they wanted to put this criminal in the White House. That's the insane part.
I couldn't believe it. Well, we can't have Donald Trump because look. So far, it's like I got to pinch myself. I can't believe we got, Thank God it's not Hillary Clinton.
I got an interesting email today. A woman said, I know you're a Trump supporter. I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
I'm a truth supporter, and that man's going up there and he's slamming it down.
I explained to her, I explained to her that I don't support any political party. My kingdom's not part of this world yet. However, I've been able to pick every president, every candidate successfully for president since Johnson. Now,
I said Trump was going to win, and he was going to win by a landslide. I said, hey, you might not consider it a landslide, but for him, I mean, come on, Who would, I mean, come on, everyone was like, there's no way. And believe me, before Trump came in the picture, I predicted back when Obama was elected that Hillary Clinton would be next. I'll tell you what, she came awful damn close. Thank God people got out there. Yeah.
But here's
in the Senate before Obama took office, before he, got the Democratic nominee, all them years back. But there was the two of them were in the Senate House, and all these cameras were focused on him and whisper, whisper, whisper. And it was right after that, Obama was like the guy. And I think it was right then, what had been about 9 years ago, that they swung that deal in the Senate. And that's how we got to here.
Well, guys, I'll tell you this. When Obama got in the second term, at that point, I thought America's done. We're done. Because if they're going to vote that guy in for a second term, and if they didn't vote him in, he's still in. I think they cheated a lot, just like Clinton did. Well, they underestimated Donald Trump on this round. But, I mean, when I seen him going in twice, a second term, when he didn't deserve a first one, I couldn't believe it. I said, well, we're done. But thank God there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And listen, for a caller from Georgia, I thank you so much for calling in. What's your name again? I'm sorry.
My name is David, and
David.
Thank you so much. I always listen to your program, and I try to catch your live shows, but a lot of time it comes up on YouTube. And I just want to say that you guys are great. I love listening, and you carry the best stuff out there.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate it, and I do appreciate the call. And folks, I really don't know him, so hey, we had a couple great calls tonight. I thank you, you folks, because again, this show is only as good as the callers and the guests and the host. I'll take some credit.
Of course, you should.
Peter, we're almost out of time. I want to give you the floor, and I want to tell people that coming up next on the L&M Radio Network is the Duck Tape Nation. Well, not the Duct Tape Nation, but Duct Tape Nation is up next. So you have to go to latenightinthe-midlands.com to hear that. And go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to make a final or a little statement here about Trump and Brexit both. If you recall, when Brexit was being discussed, we were talking about this last year, and I said, well, based on biblical prophecy, Brexit should come about and Trump should be president. Now, I based it on biblical prophecy, not that I'm a Trump supporter, but I knew there's also another prophecy that the man of lawlessness was going to have to be exposed. And I look at everything that we're now finding out with Pizzagate and Hillary and pay to play and all this other stuff that's coming out. And as soon as they get her, that Obama's going to be next. So this is going to take this will be a major can of worms that they open. And we're just going to have to see how far, how many worms come out of this can. Trump vowed to go after or human traffickers, and human trafficking is just unbelievable. That the numbers of, I just heard this today, was actually on Glenn Beck Radio. 35 million people are enslaved.
Oh, and I want to believe it or not, listen, I give people credit when credit's due. I'll give him credit. I happened to be up one morning for a doctor's appointment, and so I turned the radio on. Glenn Beck happened to be on, and he actually admitted on air that he was wrong about Donald Trump. I was like, wow. I couldn't believe it. But all right, hey, I'm going to give a guy credit when he deserves it. He deserves it. So
well, let's see what Trump does now, because he opened this. He said he's going after these people. So let's see how high this whole human trafficking and child trafficking ring goes. They were talking about the heart of it is Bangkok, Thailand. And the things, I'm not even going to repeat on the air because I want to end on a positive note, but the things that they were talking about were just horrific, involving children and American tourists. So, yeah. 8 million children vanish every year off the planet. Where do they go?
Maybe they're abducted by time travelers.
Here's the thing. We're dealing with interdimensional life forms, things that can go. We only see invisible light. Go look at what the actual band spectrum is, and look how little we can actually see with our eyes.
Wow.
So all they have to do is shift just the energy that they give off slightly. These orbs that we are seeing, the white orbs, actually, during World War II, they were called Foo Fighters. We'll have to get into this more some night about aliens. But the Foo Fighters, nobody knew whose they were. They were energy orbs that were following them around. And the Americans thought that the Germans had a new secret weapon. So we're dealing with these interdimensional life forms, and they're alive with us, and they're with us today, and we're going to have to pick this up at another time. Michael, I want to thank you for the comment to George and Ray. Folks, if you haven't read it already, Letters to Earth, the
All right, we are back. I don't know what's getting you through your days, but I hope late night in the Midlands is getting you through your nights. And Columbia, you've been without us for a while, and I bet it's really good to have us back. I mean, look what you've had to contend with, right? So now you're about to get not only the truth, but the expansion of the mind. Oh, and I mean big time. You've got a moon that's been sitting above you for ever and a day, right? Ever since you can remember. Well, we're going to tell you a little something about that moon. Well, my guest is going to tell you a little something about that moon tonight that, I don't know, it'll either get you thinking, or you'll say, oh, nonsense, and turn it right off. Or you'll say, well, finally, somebody's saying it like it is. I don't know. You'll have to decide. I've got a really good guest joining me, and he'll be with us in just a few moments. If you want to call in tonight, if this is assuming our phones work. Now we've got a few days yet before I had ordered a wire, which is going to solve our phone problem, and that wire's on its way. Unfortunately, it's taken a few days, so we should be all set next week with that for sure. And once we are, that'll be really, really nice. But the fact is tonight we'll go by chance. It might work. It might not work. We don't know. We'll see what happens when we take calls. And, of course, that's not until after the next break. Then we'll take calls. So you got a little while anyways. But when you do, it's 803-392-4566. Or you could get us on Skype ID LNM Radio. All right. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about my guest. Rob Shelsky is an avid and eclectic writer of both fiction and nonfiction and averages about 4,000 words a day. Rob, with a degree in science, has written a large number of factual articles for the former Alien Skin magazine, as well as for other magazines such as Doorways, Midnight Street UK, Internet Review of Science Fiction, and many others. And while at Alien Skin magazine, a resident columnist there for 7 years, Rob did a number of investigative articles, including some concerning the paranormal, as well as columns about UFOs, including interviews of those who have had encounters with them. He has often and over a long period explored the alien and UFO question and has made investigative trips to research such UFO hotspot areas such as Pine Bush, New York, Gulf Breeze, Florida, and other such regions, including Brown Mountain, North Carolina, known for the infamous Brown Mountain Lights, as well as investigating numerous places known for paranormal activity. And with all that, you probably know him really well now, right? That was a lot. And the website is www.robshelsky.blogspot.com. And you're in luck if you couldn't write that down. All you got to do is go to latenightinthemidlands.com and click the link right there in the picture slider or on our schedule page. Again, that's latenightinthemidlands.com. And if you're on a computer, you can go over to our chat room at latenightinthemidlands.com. Just click the chat and listen tab at the top of the website. It'll bring you over to our chat and listen page. You sign up. It only takes a minute. It really does. It only takes a minute. It's quick, really quick. You confirm your email, bam, you're in. And then you can send private messages directly to me. Questions. I'm sorry. I should rephrase. Let me rephrase that. You may send questions for the guest by private message to me. I can't hold a conversation with you because guess what? I'm live. That's how you lose affiliates. All right. So that being said, why don't we go ahead and welcome my guest on the show. Let's see. I am first going to find him. There he is. And now here we go. We'll bring him on and let's get this party started. Let's try to get this party started. All right, there we go. No problems tonight. Let's keep things real here. All right, it's ringing, folks. It's a ringing. It's ringing. We're just waiting on an answer. In the meantime, again, the website's www.latenightinthemidlands.com, folks. Hit that donate button. That's what keeps us on the air. It really does. Keep us here. Help us out. subscribe as well. And don't forget to like the video over on YouTube, because we simulcast over there. We're all over the place now. We're getting out there more and more, so many different places. And for whatever reason, the guest has not yet answered. So let's try again. I don't know. You know, you never know. Nature may have called. Sometimes these things happen at the most opportune time, right? So let's try again. No, he's trying to call me now. No, I can't do that, because then I can't bring in callers. So, all right, let's do this again. There we go. Rob, welcome to Late Night in the Midlands. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. Sorry about the phone tag there.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, so, hey, listen, I thank you so much for joining me tonight and spending some time with me on this Friday night. I'm looking forward to talking about these most very interesting topics, like the moon and time travel. I mean, when I was reading your stuff, man, I was, Jesus, we need 3 more hours. Anyways, but
what
let's.
stuff did you read?
Oh, I was just, bios. I was checking out some of the past shows you were on, and checking out your blog and some other things, and just the topics of time travel and the possibility of people being maybe abducted and brought to other timelines. Just incredible stuff. So, but I thought first we'd start out with a little background. What got you so interested in these topics that you do tackle?
Well, my brother was missing time when he was a teenager, and that got my attention. I didn't know about it until about 20 years later, and then he told me the whole story about him and a friend out in the desert and seeing a light, deciding to follow it where they thought it might have landed in the desert, and then not remembering a thing until the next morning. And then they packed up their camp and went home and never spoke about it, not for, 2 decades. And then my brother suddenly remembered it, talked to his friend, and they became so intrigued by it all that my friend moved his entire family, or my brother's friend, to Las Vegas to be near where my brother was living so they could investigate the matter further. And they did this for a number of years.
Interesting. All right. And so you're also a MUFON investigator, is that right?
Field investigator, yes.
Field investigator. Now, how is that? How do you like that? I mean, you must get to see, or at least go check out some real interesting stuff.
Oh, it's all very interesting. Everything that you talk to, the persons you talk to, the situations that you encounter are intriguing. You do get an awful lot of people, though, reporting things, and then when you talk to them, it gets very iffy. We can discount some 95% of the cases. And
well, that's got to be really, I guess that's got to be really disappointing especially if you have to travel, go somewhere, check something out, and find. Do you let the people know they're full of it, or do you, or no?
Well,
you probably can't, huh?
Yeah, we get some strange cases. We get some pretty bizarre ones, but no, most people actually think they saw something and they'll send in a photo. And of course, we have to investigate everything. And the end result is that 9 times out of 10 is just a glitch in the photo, or a lens flare or something like that. Or what the person saw probably was an airplane because it was near an airfield. Even if it wasn't an airplane, when it's within 4 or 5 miles of a major airfield, we have to, and under certain weather conditions, we have to just assume that it probably wasn't a real UFO.
Yeah, well, here in Columbia, because we have a new affiliate in Columbia, South Carolina, so with that, wouldn't be a bad time to bring it up. I've had, since, I come from Rochester, New York, and since I have come to Columbia, South Carolina, I've had more sightings than, one person deserves. And I'm not someone who sees a little light in the sky and says, oh, it's an alien, but I've seen some stuff that I know I've never seen before. Like almost like energy vehicles, energy crafts. They glow. The light doesn't shine down on the ground. But they're bright, and you wouldn't notice unless you looked up and seen them there. Just interesting stuff. I've seen the triangle types, and no noise, no nothing. And so maybe there's human beings flying these things, but if there is, boy, that's some amazing technology they have.
Yes, it is, and it could be some of them are by human beings. We could have reversed engineered technology on some of the UFOs that they say have been recovered, and which I think have been recovered. So there's a lot of consensus now that there are 2 types of UFOs: aliens and human.
Well, yeah, and by now I would think we'd have something maybe figured out from some of the ones that have crashed, at least. So I speculate now with the abductions too. I say, how do we know that some or maybe all these abductions are, human beings, and they're making you think it's aliens. You know?
Well, yes and no. I mean,
Not all of them, but I mean, nowadays, recently, like now they could be doing it and blaming the ETs for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there are conspiracy theorists who say that they're doing it in collusion with the whole UFO thing, that if someone gets a little too out of hand, they have to either silence them some way or other. And one of those ways is to disappear them.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
There's Sheldon's list, for instance, that has quite a list of people who supposedly committed suicide, died, or disappeared under mysterious circumstances. And a lot of these people were journalists and researchers.
Now, there is I don't know the exact number statistic, but I'm sure it's very, very high. But there's a lot of people, I mean, really missing in this world, right? Who, I mean, literally missing. They've never been found. And where are these people going? I mean, how come we're not running across? I mean, that's a lot of people. You could probably fill up a lake with them.
Oh, you could do more than fill up a lake. In America, the estimates vary, but they say around 900,000 people a year disappear. If you subtract all those people who were kidnapped, murdered, who just wanted to disappear, or children who were abducted by the other parent in a dispute over child custody, if you get rid of all of those, you're still left, again, with that anywhere between 5 and 15%. I use the lower figure, 5%. And that comes to darn close to 50,000 people per year, depending on which original estimate you use as the number disappeared. But Australia has a huge number disappearing too. For a country as small as they are, population-wise, they average 30,000 disappearances a year. An incredible number.
Wow. And so, I mean, where are these people going? I mean, it's not, it can't be that easy to hide thousands of people. I mean, somebody's going to turn up somewhere. I mean, I would think, right? I mean,
well, maybe they're all at Disney World.
They might be under Disney World for all we know.
Or could be, yes.
Yeah.
Could be. I think they're being disappeared permanently. David Paulides talks about it in his missing books, or 11 missing books, and he intimates, at least from what I got out of it, is that it's something like a Bigfoot or Sasquatch that might be the culprit behind those. But my evidence would suggest that it's something more extraterrestrial or alien in nature.
Yeah, and that could be. Now, listen, I was going to save this for later and just get to the moon, but I mean, we're on this subject, people disappearing. Now, I had read where it was suggested that people could be traveling through time and like taking people to another timeline.
Well, there's a number of possible explanations. There are many who believe that UFOs are interdimensional, not specifically extraterrestrial, which means that people could be abducted to other timelines. There are others who say that people are simply falling into other timelines, and there are others who say that our timelines merge at some points, and that's another whole story in itself, but it involves the Mandela effect. But yes, it's quite possible people are disappearing to other timelines.
The Mandela effect. Now, there's another one. I mean, how much water or do you put into the whole Mandela effect? Now, we've done shows on that before, and I've had people. I got one guy. He is super religious. His Bible is his guardian angel, and he came on, and I couldn't believe he said it, but he said there was things changed in his old Bibles that, like he went back and stuff was literally changed, meaning, not that they made new copies or anything. He had the old copy. He knew it by heart. He said stuff was changed in it. He blamed the Mandela effect.
Well, one good example of that is the lion lying down with the lamb. You've seen pictures of that all the time. You see it over in children's nursery rooms and stuff, this picture of a lion lying with a lamb, and they're just as sweet as they can be to each other. The Bible doesn't refer to a lion lying down with a lamb. It refers to a wolf lying down with a lamb. And yet I was brought up, and I know a lot of people brought up, and you can look on the internet, just type that in, and you'll see image after image of a lion with a lamb, and yet it's not. It's a wolf with a lamb.
Interesting. Yeah. So I mean, so you think the Mandela effect could be real then?
I think it is real. I don't think all reported cases of it are real. I do think that one the one we were just talking about might be, because I swear I've always learned that it was the lion and the lamb, not the wolf and the lamb. I never even heard of a wolf and a lamb until recently. But yes, I think it's real. I don't think Berenstain Bears versus Berenstain Bears, which is a really highly touted one, is necessarily a true Mandela effect. It may just be that it is a mismemory. But there is something odd about the Mandela effect. When people get it wrong, they get it wrong in their thousands and even tens of thousands. And the really odd part is they get it wrong the same way. A good example is the color chartreuse. What color is chartreuse to you?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay, well, a lot of people think it's a sort of a reddish brown, reddish purple, like a maroon, and it isn't. It's a lime green. And yet, when the people get it wrong, they all get it wrong the same way. They don't say it's orange or yellowish or yellow orange. They say it's a reddish brown or reddish purple. They get it exactly the opposite color from what it is. And they all get it wrong the same way. That's the weird part.
Once you get into colors outside the Crayola crayon box, I'm lost.
I kind of go along with that myself, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I got some things I'll tell Autumn. I'll say, oh, it's green. Oh, it's not green. It's blue. It looks green to me. But anyways, so then we can have people traveling. I mean, so these people traveling in time, they would be, I mean, us then, right? From the future or from where?
Well, they could be, or they could be extraterrestrials. They, the theory by Nick Bostrom, I believe his name was, is that if there are future civilizations, some of them may have no interest at all in doing time simulations or time travel. There may be no future civilizations. We might all wipe ourselves out, but even if we did wipe ourselves out, there might be other races in other situations, galaxies, solar systems, that do have an interest. And if they do, and they do simulations, then based on that, it's far more likely we are in a simulation than not. And yes, the other thing would be that if time travel is ever discovered, and I believe it already has been, by the way, and I cite cases like with Sid Hurwitz and his supposed time machine and some others to kind of back that up. But yeah, I think it's quite possible that time travel exists and that people are moving through time. In fact, I think it's a probability.
That'd be fascinating. So what's the chances that that right here on our timeline, that somebody's already invented a time machine? I remember a while back somebody sent Art Bell some contraption, but he said he never tried it. But
Probably a good thing.
Yeah, probably would have fried him. But so what do you think the odds are that we have something like that here in this timeline?
I think, do we have it in this time? I think there's a reasonable probability that we've come up with something. Sid Hurwitz lived in Toronto, Canada. He was incredibly good with machinery. He supposedly came up with in fact, he had two companies, and he was so sought after that during the war, the Toronto government asked that he be withdrawn from the military so that he could help them set up an electrical grid in the area. I believe it was World War I. Don't quote me on that. It might have been World War II, but I think it was World War I. And so he did. But he supposedly invented a time machine.